Settle in, lower your shoulders, close your eyes if you want, and let Skyrim come to you tonight. We're not rushing through anything. We're just gonna sit with the lore, breathe through it, and let the firelight of Tamriel warm whatever corner of the world you're sitting in right now. Tonight's journey takes us deep into the encounters most players either rush past, never find at all, or defeat without ever stopping to wonder what they actually were. The bosses of Skyrim, not just the ones in the main quest, though we'll walk through those too, slowly and fully. We're talking about the ones hiding in the dark beneath mountains, waiting at the tops of frozen peaks, sealed in the depths of a dead god's realm, resting inside ancient barrows that history forgot to name. Every single one of them has a story. Every one of them existed before you arrived, and every one of them carries lore that goes back thousands of years. So let's begin. Let's start at the very top. Part 1. The World Eater, Alduin's true nature and cosmic purpose. There is a moment, right at the start of Skyrim, where you are about to be executed. Your hands are bound. A headsman's block is waiting. And then the sky tears open and something lands on the watchtower above you, and the world changes. That creature is Alduin. His name in the dragon language translates to 3 words: destroyer, devour, master. Not one of those words is incidental. Each one describes a different dimension of what Alduin actually is. He is not simply a dragon that got too powerful. He is not just a villain in the traditional sense. He is a function of existence itself, and the tragedy at the heart of his story is that he forgot what that function was. Let's slow down and sit with that for a moment. Before Nirn existed, before time ran in a straight line, before any of the races of Tamriel drew breath or laid down bones in the earth, there were certain entities that came into being at the very first moments of creation. Alduin was one of them. He is described in the oldest Nordic texts as the firstborn of Akatosh, the dragon god of time. That single fact carries enormous weight. Akatosh is the chief divine of the imperial pantheon, the anchor of time itself, the god whose very existence makes linear time possible. And from that god, or from that cosmic principle, Alduin was born. He predates Nirn. He predates the current world. He was already in existence when the world was still being shaped by the original divine forces. His purpose, according to the oldest sources, was to end the world at the close of each cycle, not to conquer it, not to rule it, to consume it so that time could reset and existence could begin again in a new form. This process is called a kalpa, and Naren has gone through it before. The world you walk through in Skyrim is not the first world. It is one in a long sequence of worlds, each one ending when the World Eater fulfills his role. Think about what that means. The Alduin you fight in the main quest is not failing to do something evil. He is failing to do something cosmically necessary. There is a version of this story where Alduin is not the villain at all, where he is simply a mechanism of universal renewal, like the tide that comes in and clears the shore. When he was originally cast forward through time by the ancient Nordic heroes using an Elder Scroll, they did not defeat him. They delayed him. They kicked to the end of the world a few thousand years down the road. And here is where it gets genuinely fascinating. When Alduin returned in the Fourth Era, in the year 201, he did not arrive behaving like a force of cosmic renewal. He arrived behaving like a warlord trying to reclaim lost territory. He began resurrecting dragons, not to fulfill some cycle of renewal, to build an army. He began feeding on the souls of the dead in Sovngarde, not to hasten the end of the Kalpa, but to grow more powerful for himself. He had drifted so far from his original purpose that even the cosmic structure recognized him as broken. His divine mandate had curdled into personal ambition. This is fact 7 worth pausing on. Alduin is explicitly stated in lore to have forsaken his role as the World Eater long before the events of Skyrim. During the Merethic era, when the Dragon War raged across Skyrim, Alduin was not trying to end the world. He was trying to rule it. He set himself up as a god king. He demanded worship from the humans of Skyrim. He commanded dragon priests, and through them, commanded human populations to offer tribute and servitude. This was not part of his cosmic function. This was a dragon who looked at the power he had been given for a specific purpose, and decided he wanted to use it for something else entirely. That is the real reason the Nordic heroes could justify fighting him. Not because he was playing his role badly, because he had abandoned his role altogether. Alduin's name in dragon language literally contains the word for master, and he called himself that. When he spoke to other dragons, his language was that of a ruler asserting dominance. When he flew over Helgen at the very start of the game, his roar was not the sound of a force of nature at work. It was the sound of something that believed in its own supremacy, announcing itself to the world. Here is something that most players never notice. When Alduin resurrects the dragon Saloknir from his burial mound during the main quest, he says something in dragon language. He is not simply waking up a servant. He is performing an act that, according to lore, belongs to him alone. No other dragon in Skyrim can do this. The ability to restore flesh to ancient dragon bones, to pull a consciousness back into a physical form after thousands of years, is specific to Alduin. It is tied either to his status as firstborn or to his unique cosmic function as the being who governs the ending and beginning of cycles. And here is the haunting implication of that. Every dragon the Dragonborn kills and absorbs the soul of is a dragon that Alduin can never resurrect. That is the actual strategic dimension of the main quest. By absorbing dragon souls, you are not just gaining power, you are permanently dismantling Alduin's army, one soul at a time, in a way that cannot be reversed. Alduin knows this. That is why he targets you. Not because you are a nuisance, because you are the only being in existence with the specific ability to do him permanent damage. Let's talk about his weakness, because this reveals something beautiful about the world building. Alduin has a 50% resistance to fire and a 25% weakness to frost. Fire is his element. It is what he breathes. The universe built in a vulnerability to its opposite. Cold, ice, the stillness that fire consumes. This is not a game balance decision. It mirrors something real about the lore, the way that forces that carry destruction within themselves are often most vulnerable to the thing that represents quiet and preservation. And then there is Sovngarde. When you finally follow Alduin through the portal at Skuldafn and arrive in the Nordic afterlife, you find him there, but not performing any ritual of cosmic renewal. He is feeding. He is consuming the souls of dead Nordic heroes, drawing power from the afterlife itself. The three ancient heroes who originally fought him, Gurmlith Golden Hilt, Hakon One-Eye, and Feldir the Old, are trapped in Sovngarde with him, slowly being eaten. They cannot move on. They cannot rest. Alduin has turned the most sacred space in Nordic cosmology into his personal larder. There is something deeply wrong about that. Sovngarde is meant to be a reward, a final rest after a life of honorable struggle. Alduin has turned the place where Norse-inspired warriors go when they die into a place where they are consumed for his benefit. It is one of the most quietly disturbing images in the whole game, and it happens in a location that looks almost impossibly beautiful. When Alduin is finally defeated in Sovngarde, something unusual happens. His soul cannot be absorbed. Every other dragon in the game, when killed, yields a soul to the Dragonborn. Alduin does not. His soul simply disperses. And the scholar Arngeir, the leader of the Greybeards, notes something important when asked about this. He theorizes that Alduin may not be permanently dead, that he will eventually return to fulfill the prophecy, that the Dragonborn did not end the World Eater. They ended this iteration of the World Eater. The cycle continues. The world still has an ending. Alduin is simply not the one who will bring it this time. There is one more detail about Alduin that almost nobody discusses. He has dialogue that triggers if you are wearing Daedric armor when you face him. He says the Daedra themselves fear him. There is no way to verify if this is true, or if it is simply the arrogance of a being who has existed longer than any Daedric prince. But the fact that Bethesda included that line says something about how they imagined Alduin, not as one powerful thing among many, but as something that occupies a category above even the entities most players consider the ultimate power in the Elder Scrolls universe. He is the World Eater, Destroyer, Devourer, Master, and he forgot what that was supposed to mean. Drop a comment right now and let me know where in the world you are and what time it is. Whether you're getting ready for bed, winding down after a long shift, or just letting the night settle around you, I want to know. And if this is the kind of content that helps you relax and drift, subscribing takes about 2 seconds, and it means you won't miss a single story. Now, let's go deeper. Part 2. Paarthurnax. The dragon who chose conscience high on the throat of the world, above the clouds, Above the monastery of High Hrothgar, where even the Greybeards live, there is a dragon sitting on a carved stone wall. He has been there for thousands of years. His wings are tattered, his scales have dulled, his horns are chipped and worn. He is one of the oldest living things in Skyrim, and he chose to be here. He chose to stay. His name is Paarthurnax, and his name in dragon language means three things: ambition, overlord, cruelty. That is not the name of a hero. That is the name of something that was, at one point, genuinely terrible. Let's begin at the beginning of his story, because it starts long before the game does, and it sets up one of the most complex characters in all of Skyrim. During the Merethic era, when dragons ruled the land, and humans were either worshippers or slaves, Paarthurnax served as the right hand of Alduin himself. He was the lieutenant of the World Eater. According to both his own testimony and the broader historical record, he was present at and participated in unspeakable acts against humanity. He watched humans suffer. He did not simply allow it. He was instrumental in maintaining the systems that made it continue. And then something shifted. There are two accounts of why Paarthurnax turned against Alduin, and both of them are worth examining because neither one completely cancels out the other. The first account, the one Paarthurnax himself gives when you speak with him on the throat of the world, is that he turned because of Alduin's false claim of godhood. Alduin declared himself a god, not just a powerful dragon, not just a firstborn of Akatosh, but a god deserving of worship on par with the divines. Paarthurnax found this philosophically corrupt. Alduin was not fulfilling his role as World Eater. He was exploiting his power to subjugate both humans and other dragons. And Paarthurnax, who had served that role faithfully, found himself unable to continue serving something he recognized as a lie. The second account, drawn from Nordic legend, says something different. It says that the goddess Kine, the Nordic representation of the wind and sky, personally sent Paarthurnax to aid humanity, that his defection was not purely his own moral awakening, but was guided by divine intervention. Both of these can be true simultaneously. The Elder Scrolls lore is comfortable with that kind of layering. A god can guide someone toward a decision they were already beginning to make on their own. Paarthurnax may have been reaching toward defection, and Kine may have been the hand that completed the reach. What he did next is the reason the Dragon War ended, and almost nobody alive in Skyrim's era understands this. Paarthurnax went to three ancient Nordic heroes: Gurmla Golden Hilt, Hakon One-Eye, Feldir the Old. He taught them the voice. He gave them the Thuum, the ability to speak in dragon language and actualize reality through sound, the very power that had made dragons nearly undefeatable. This was an act of genuine, enormous consequence. Dragons communicated and fought through the Thuum. Their language was their weapon and their dominance. By teaching it to mortals, Paarthurnax handed over the single most important advantage his species had. The humans eventually developed Dragonrend from this knowledge, a shout that forced dragons to experience the concept of mortality, to understand linearity and endings, something dragons, as timeless beings, could not naturally comprehend. The Dragonrend shout was so conceptually foreign to dragons that it stunned them, grounded them, left them vulnerable in a way nothing else could. Even with Dragonrend, even with all the power the heroes had gained, they could not kill Alduin outright. He was simply too powerful. So, in the final confrontation at the throat of the world, they did something that changed history. They used an Elder Scroll to displace Alduin through time. They sent him forward into the future, unsure exactly when he would land, knowing only that he would eventually return, and that when he did, whoever was alive then would have to deal with him. Paarthurnax had known this would happen, and so he stayed. He went to the throat of the world, to the exact place where Alduin had been cast into the future, to the point in space where the wound in time still existed, slowly healing but never fully closing. He sat down, and he waited, for thousands of years. Let that settle. Thousands of years, alone, on a mountain, in the cold, fighting every day against the fundamental nature he was born with. Here is what the game makes explicit through Paarthurnax's dialogue. And it is one of the most honest and beautiful things any character in Skyrim says. Dragons are built to dominate. The will to power is in their blood. Every dragon that has ever lived, including Paarthurnax, wakes up each morning with instincts that push toward control, conquest, subjugation. That is not a choice. That is biology and cosmology combined. The natural state of a dragon is to take the highest peak and call it its own, and demand that everything below it pay homage. Parthenax has been fighting that instinct for millennia. He does not pretend it is not there. He does not claim to have overcome it fully. He says, quietly and honestly, that he still feels it, that the desire to dominate never fully left him, that every day is a philosophical struggle against what he is, in order to be what he has chosen to become. He meditates on the way of the voice. He practices the Thu'um as a discipline of restraint rather than a tool of power. He has shaped his existence around proving that a creature born to dominate can choose not to. Whether that is enough to erase what he did in the Merethic era is the question the game asks and refuses to answer on your behalf. The Blades, when they discover his identity, demand his death. Their reasoning is blunt. He helped Alduin enslave humanity. His subsequent betrayal of Alduin does not erase those crimes. If anything, it simply proves that he is capable of betrayal, which makes him dangerous. The Greybeards see it differently. They say that Alduin's army had no dissenters. Every dragon served him because there was simply no alternative. Parthenax was the first and only dragon to turn against his own kind. Without him, humanity never learns the Thu'um. Without him, Alduin is never defeated. Arngeir's words in this exchange are precise and worth pausing on. If not for Parthenax, Alduin could not have been overthrown. The entire history of Skyrim, every Nord alive in the Fourth Era, exists in part because this one dragon, born with ambition and cruelty in his very name, made a choice thousands of years ago and has been paying for it in solitude ever since. When Alduin finally finds Parthenax on the throat of the world after his return, there is a confrontation between the brothers. Alduin offers him a choice: join again or die. Parthenax refuses. He fights beside the Dragonborn to defeat his own elder brother. And then, after Alduin is gone, Parthenax does something that no other surviving dragon is doing. He begins trying to teach the Dragonren dragons, the ones Alduin resurrected, the way of the voice. He is trying to convert them. He is trying to turn former enemies into practitioners of peace. He says simply that they need a teacher. He was found by someone who taught him. He will now be that teacher for others. The game never tells you whether this worked, whether any of those resurrected dragons sat down on a mountain and began meditating, whether Parthenax's hope for a world of dragons choosing conscience over dominance was ever even partially realized. That ambiguity is intentional. Some things the lore leaves open because that is the nature of hope. You act on it without knowing the outcome. Parthenax has been doing that for thousands of years. It is the only kind of hope that is real. One final fact about him that most players miss: his chipped horns, his tattered wings, his dulled scales. These are not simply signs of age in the conventional sense. Dragons are immortal. They do not degrade the way mortals do. The physical wear on Parthenax is the mark of an extraordinarily long existence spent in harsh conditions. The cold of the highest peak in Skyrim, the wind, the isolation. He looks like he has been through something, because he has. He has been through everything. Part 3. The Dragon Priests of Skyrim. 8 masks, 8 stories across the holds of Skyrim, in the depths of ancient Nordic ruins, behind Draugr-filled corridors and crumbling word walls, there are 8 sealed sarcophagi. Each one holds something that has not stirred in thousands of years. When the Dragonborn comes close enough, the lids burst open and something ancient and terrible rises. These are the Dragon Priests. And before we talk about who they are now, rotting undead leeches wrapped in ancient robes, clutching staves with eyes that glow like the inside of a furnace, we need to talk about who they were, because they were not always monsters. In the Merethic era, when the dragon cult ruled Skyrim and dragons were gods as far as the human population was concerned, the Dragon Priests held a specific social role. They were intermediaries. They stood between the dragons and the human population and translated the will of the divine, as the dragons chose to be seen, into a form that could be acted on. They maintained the temples. They conducted the rituals. They ensured that tribute flowed and that worship remained consistent. The 8 highest-ranking dragon priests were not simply administrators. They were something closer to feudal lords, each one bound in service to a specific dragon, each one given gifts and powers by their patron that reflected that dragon's domain and personality. Their masks, each one a unique work of craftsmanship and enchantment, were these gifts made physical. Think about what that means when you look at the masks themselves. Croesus, which means sorrow, Moroke, which means glorious, Nachkreen, which means vengeance, Otar, Rachgat, Vokun, Volsung, Hevnorak. These are not serial numbers. These are identities. Each one was a person, with a history, with a relationship to a specific dragon, with a role in a civilization that, however dark, was real and complex. Let's walk through each of them slowly. Croesus was buried not in a tomb or a sealed barrow like the others, but at the top of a mountain called Sheer Point, one of Skyrim's highest peaks. His sarcophagus sits directly in front of a word wall. Even in death, he was positioned as a guardian of knowledge. His name means sorrow. His mask enhances alchemy, archery, and lockpicking, a combination that does not suggest a warrior or a mage, but something more careful and precise. Some scholars of Skyrim's lore believe this combination hints that Croesus may have been involved in theft or infiltration at some point in his service to the dragon cult. The mask supports a theory, not verified but compelling, that he once stole something important from another branch of the cult and was exiled or demoted. His burial at Sheer Point, rather than in the capital of the cult, could reflect that fall from grace. His name, Sorrow, may be his own self-description. When you fight him, he attacks with frost magic. He is described as a frost dragon priest. He summons a storm Atronach. He is powerful, but the most memorable thing about his encounter is the setting. You fight him on a windswept mountaintop, with a dragon circling overhead that will join the fight if Dragon Rising has been completed. Two ancient enemies, one ancient and rotting, one alive and furious, on a peak above the clouds. Moroke's name means glorious. He earned it. Of all the dragon priests in Skyrim, Morokai was the one who obtained the Staff of Magnus, an artifact of power so significant that the entire College of Winterhold questline revolves around recovering it from him. He was entombed in Labyrinthian, the ancient capital of the dragon cult, and he found the staff at some point either before or after his interment. His mask doubles the wearer's magicka regeneration, the most directly powerful of all the enchantments in the base game. The story of Moroke's encounter with the young Savos Aren is one of the most tragic backstories in the game, told in fragments through journals and ghostly apparitions. Savos Aren, who would eventually become the Archmage of the College of Winterhold, once led a group of fellow students into Labyrinthian in search of a prize. They found Moroke. Most of them died. The survivors discovered they could not kill him. In desperation, Savos bound two of the remaining students in place through a permanent magical enthrallment, forcing them to maintain a magical barrier around Moroke for the rest of their existences. He then escaped. He became Archmage. He never spoke of what happened in Labyrinthian, and the two people he sacrificed there maintained their vigil for decades, minds still present inside frozen bodies, unable to move, unable to die, simply holding the barrier. When the Dragonborn enters Labyrinthian, one of the very first things they encounter are those ghostly figures, the echo of Savos Arn and his companions, playing out the approach to Moroke like a memory caught in amber. You see the young students falling one by one. You see Savos making his terrible decision, and then you walk past it all and go deeper, and you fight the thing he could not. The mask Moroke drops, moonstone gray and unassuming in appearance, is the ghost of a glorious legacy. Nachkreen means vengeance, and his role was unique among the eight. He was not guarding a ruin or a word wall, he was guarding a portal. Specifically, he was entombed at Skuldafn, a remote and almost inaccessible Nordic temple high in the Velothi Mountains, tasked with presiding over Alduin's portal to Sovngarde. Even in the Fourth Era, even after thousands of years of undeath, Nachkreen is still there, still at his post, still guarding the door through which Alduin intended to access the realm of the Nordic dead and feed. Nachkreen is the only dragon priest who cannot be revisited after the main quest takes you to Skuldafn. The portal is a one-way door. Once you step through it, Skuldafn is inaccessible through normal gameplay. If you did not fight Nachkreen, if you somehow bypassed him, his mask is gone forever. The game treats this with a kind of lore-appropriate gravity. The guardian of the door to the afterlife guards it permanently, and you pass through that door exactly once. His mask is ebony, black, and solid, and it boosts magicka and reduces the cost of both destruction and restoration spells. The combination speaks to a priest who dealt in extremes, the power to destroy and the power to preserve, held in tension by someone guarding the threshold between life and death. Otar the Mad earns his title. He was entombed in Ragnvald, a Nordic ruin in the Reach, and the circumstances of his imprisonment are worth examining. Ragnvald contains 2 skull keys, each one held by a secondary Draugr guardian. These guardians exist specifically to keep Otar sealed. Someone, at some point in Skyrim's history, decided that Otar was too dangerous to simply bury and forget. He had to be actively contained. He had to have wardens keeping him locked in place. What drove him mad is not specified in any available text. The lore simply offers the title and lets you draw your own conclusions. His mask provides resistance to fire, frost, and shock equally, which suggests a dragon priest who had, in life, developed comprehensive magical defenses, perhaps against former allies, perhaps against threats we cannot now identify. The mask of a man who was afraid of many things. Ragat, whose name means fury, is found in Forelhost, the location the game's lore identifies as the site of the dragon cult's last stand. In the First Era, when the dragon cult had been comprehensively defeated, a group of loyalists retreated to this secluded mountain monastery. Ragat led them. Rather than surrender to the Nordic forces closing in, he directed a mass suicide. The entire remaining population of Forelhost poisoned themselves, choosing death over capture. The player character, exploring Forelhost during a related quest, discovers this history slowly through journals left behind. The last entries are quiet and resolute. There is no panic in them. The people who died in Forelhost believed in what they were doing to the end. Ragat's mask is among the more martial of the 8, reflecting someone who had chosen violence as the ultimate expression of conviction. Vokun, whose name means shadow, is found in Highgate ruins, and his connection is to the arcane specifically. His mask enhances alteration, conjuration, and illusion. A priest of shadows, of hidden things, of magic that operates sideways to the normal world. There is something fitting about the fact that his ruin is in the northernmost parts of Skyrim, where the light is already diminished and the world leans toward permanent gray. Volsung, whose name means horrible, guards a chest containing a remarkable piece of lore, a map of Skyrim with locations marked on it. He is found in a lighthouse on a rocky promontory on the northern coast, and his mask is unusual in that it provides bonuses to carry weight, prices in shops, and underwater breathing. Not exactly the combat-oriented enchantments of most priests. Volsung in life seems to have been oriented toward the practical dimensions of civilization, trade, movement, survival. His name, Horrible, might reflect how he used those practical skills rather than any supernatural terror. Hevnorak, whose name is harder to translate cleanly but relates to concepts of power and binding, is found in Valthuum. His story is told through a quest. A ghost named Valdar has been maintaining a seal on Hevnorak's tomb for centuries, preventing him from rising. He asks the Dragonborn to help him collect 3 urns containing portions of Hevnorak's power, which Hevnorak himself scattered in anticipation of his eventual return. Hevnorak planned ahead. He prepared his own resurrection. Valdar has been sacrificing eternity to prevent it. And finally, beyond these 8, there is Konarik, the 9th mask, the golden one. Its name means warlord. Konarik's mask cannot be obtained through a normal enemy encounter because Konarik was never a specific dragon priest in the traditional sense. The mask was held in Bramjunar, the capital of the dragon cult, inside a sealed stone dragon statue. It could only be accessed when all 8 of the other masks were assembled together in one place. The mask was the symbol of the collective hierarchy, the crown at the top of the system. To retrieve it, a player must find a wooden mask in Labyrinthian. Equipping this wooden mask inside a specific dome transports them back in time to when Labyrinthian was Bramjunar in its prime. With all 8 masks placed on pedestals surrounding the central statue, Konarik can be released. The wooden mask was found next to a scholar's skeleton. He had found it. He had understood what it was. And his hired mercenaries, not understanding what was happening when he put it on and disappeared, panicked and killed him when he returned. The scholar who solved the puzzle died before he could claim the prize. His skeleton has been sitting there ever since, a small, quiet tragedy in the corner of a larger one. Konarik itself, when equipped, occasionally summons a powerful dragon priest to fight alongside you in battle, not an imitation. An actual dragon priest, conjured to serve the one wearing the warlord's mask. It is the dragon cult's highest honor, 8,000 years past its context, still functioning. Part 4. Miraak, the first Dragonborn and his eternal prison. There are things that happened in the Merethic era that the people of Skyrim's fourth era do not know. There are facts about the dragon priests, about the nature of the Dragonborn, about the history of Solstheim that were buried so thoroughly under centuries of silence that they only began to surface when cultists arrived in Skyrim trying to kill you in the opening stages of the Dragonborn DLC. The cultists serve Miraak. The name probably meant nothing to you when you first heard it. It did not show up in any of the histories. No song or saga mentioned him. The Greybeards, who know more about Draconic history than almost anyone alive, spoke of him only with reluctance and unease. Miraak. In dragon language, allegiance and guide. He was the first Dragonborn, not metaphorically, not in a secondary lineage. He was the first mortal in recorded history to be born with the soul of a dragon, the gift that allows the absorption of draconic souls and the mastery of the Thu'um at a rate no normal human could achieve through meditation alone. He existed before the concept of the Dragonborn had any cultural meaning, before the title had been given to anyone, in an era when the dragon cult still held power, and the idea of a mortal with a dragon's soul was either unknown or deliberately suppressed. Miraak was a dragon priest. He served the dragon cult on the island of Solstheim, far off the northeastern coast of Skyrim. He was esteemed. He was given a mask by his dragon overlords, the mask that bears his name, flexible in its enchantment, scaling to whoever wears it, reflecting the adaptive nature of its original owner. He had a temple. He had followers. He was, by all accounts, one of the most powerful members of the cult. And then he found something, a black book. The black books are artifacts of Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric prince of forbidden knowledge, whose realm Apocrypha is an infinite library containing every text ever written and many that have not been yet. Mora does not leave these books lying around out of generosity. They are lures. They are traps baited with exactly what certain kinds of people cannot resist. Knowledge that no one else has. Miraak was that kind of person. He opened the book. He read. And Hermaeus Mora, the one who sees all things, the one who records all knowledge, offered him a deal. The exact terms of the arrangement are not stated plainly anywhere in the game, but the shape of it can be assembled from fragments. Mora offered Miraak access to forbidden knowledge, specifically the Bend Will Shout, a word of power so far outside the normal scope of the Thu'um that even the Greybeards did not know of it. Bend Will allows the wielder to dominate dragons, to override their will, to make them submit and serve. For a dragonborn priest living under dragon overlords, this was not merely a powerful shout. It was the conceptual reversal of everything he had been raised to believe about the natural order. In exchange, Miraak entered Mora's service. He became his champion. What he did next with that power is the reason the dragons burned his temple to the ground. Miraak used Bend Will to turn on his draconic masters. He had already killed a significant number of dragons by the time the cult's leadership fully understood what was happening. He drew 3 other dragon priests to his cause, Azadal, Dukaon, and Zakraisos, who became his acolyte priests, a second hierarchy beneath a dragonborn rather than a dragon. The Skaal people of Solstheim remember him in their legends as the traitor, because during the dragon war that was raging in Skyrim, when the Nordic heroes were fighting to break the dragon's hold on humanity, they sent word to Miraak asking for help. Hakon One-Eye, one of the 3 heroes who would eventually use an Elder Scroll against Alduin, contacted him. Miraak refused. He was not fighting for human freedom. He was fighting for his own power. The dragon war in Skyrim was something that happened elsewhere. He had his own agenda. Eventually, a loyal dragon priest named Valak was sent against him. The battle between Miraak and Valak is described in Skaal legend with an intimacy that most histories lack, as if someone was actually watching it happen. It lasted for a long time. Both were extraordinarily powerful. The landscape of Solstheim was altered by the conflict. In the end, Valak proved the stronger. Miraak was defeated. And just as Valak was about to end him, Hermaeus Mora intervened. He pulled Miraak into Apocrypha. The dragons burned his temple. Valak was rewarded with dominion over Solstheim and bound by oath to watch the island for any sign of Miraak's return. And Miraak, in the endless black library of Apocrypha, began to wait. He waited through the rest of the Merethic era, through the entire First Era, with its empires and wars and the rise and fall of the Dwemer, through the Second Era and its interregnum, through the Third Era and the Oblivion Crisis. He waited for thousands of years in a realm of books and tentacles and creatures made of eyes, growing stronger, accumulating knowledge, and plotting a return. His opportunity came in the Fourth Era, when Alduin's return and the emergence of a new last Dragonborn created a disruption in the cosmic balance significant enough for Miraak to begin exercising influence through the Allmaker Stones of Solstheim. The people of the island began sleepwalking. They built structures around the stones in the night, not knowing why, not able to stop themselves. Miraak was using them as instruments, channels for a ritual that would give him enough power to break through from Apocrypha. When you arrive on Solstheim as the last Dragonborn and begin investigating, Mora himself speaks to you through a black book. He does not do this out of kindness. He does it because Miraak, his champion of thousands of years, has been acting increasingly independently. He has been keeping secrets from Mora. He has been making plans that do not include serving the Prince of Knowledge indefinitely, and Mora, who collects all things, cannot tolerate the thought of a champion who might slip his grasp. The confrontation with Miraak takes place in Apocrypha itself, at the summit of his Tower of Forbidden Knowledge. He is there in his full power, his mask, his robes woven from things that should not exist, his sword that writhes with Apocrypha's tendril stuff. He speaks with the certainty of someone who has had thousands of years to think about this moment. And then Hermaeus Mora kills him, not the Dragonborn, Mora. When Miraak is weakened and tries to escape into the depths of Apocrypha, Mora impales him with his own tentacles and finishes it. He was never going to let Miraak leave his realm. Not really. Not truly. The entire encounter was managed from the beginning. Mora needed a new champion, one who had demonstrated the power to defeat his old one. The tragedy of Miraak is that he was never actually free. He went from serving dragons to serving Mora, and the thousands of years he spent in Apocrypha, building his power, were not years of growing independence. They were years of being maintained, kept alive and powerful enough to be useful, waiting to be replaced. His name, allegiance, guide. The first word was always more accurate than the second. Part 5. The Acolyte Priests of Solstheim, Azadal, Dukaan, and Zakrisos. The three dragon priests who followed Miraak into rebellion, his acolyte priests as the lore calls them, are each buried on Solstheim and each have stories that stretch back to the Merethic era. They are not merely boss encounters, they are the remnants of the only internal schism the dragon cult ever produced. Azadal's name translates to embittered destroyer. It is a precise description of what he became, but it is not what he was born as. He grew up in Sarthal, the first Nordic city during the late Merethic era. As a child, he had a notable aptitude for magic. As a young adult, he exceeded all his tutors. He left his home, his wife, his child, to train under elven masters, because no human teacher had anything left to teach him. He mastered methods of arcane magic that no Nord had understood before him, specifically enchanting. He became the first great Nord enchanter, a pioneer who built a bridge between human magical intuition and the far older elven schools. And then the Snow Elves attacked Sarthal. They attacked it, as the game's lore notes elsewhere, specifically because they were after the Eye of Magnus, an artifact of power buried beneath the city. The massacre was not random, it was targeted, but the people who died in Sarthal, including Azadal's family, had no way of knowing that. They simply burned. Azadal survived, and he returned to his studies with a different orientation. He was not pursuing knowledge for its own sake anymore. He was building toward a specific capability, enough power to destroy what had destroyed everything he loved. His name, Embittered Destroyer, came from what he became in pursuit of this goal. He lost himself in the obsession. He sacrificed everything personal about himself on the altar of power. He eventually fell under Miraak's influence and became one of the Acolyte Priests. He was sealed in Kolbjorn Barrow on Solstheim, and his reawakening in the Fourth Era comes through one of the most methodical quests in the Dragonborn DLC. A scholar named Rallis Sidaris, already magically enthralled by Azadal's influence before he even realizes it, hires the player to excavate the barrow 3 times. The excavation unlocks more of the burial. Oxidal's power increases with each phase. Workers die. The influence deepens. By the time the player confronts the Dragon Priest, Rallis has used the blood of the hired miners to feed Oxidal's resurrection. He did not choose this. He was chosen. Azadal's mask enhances fire damage, fire enchanting, and provides fire resistance. The man who lost his family to fire made fire his domain. Dukan's name can translate to dishonor, but it can also be read as Devour Kine, a name that implies a deliberate insult to the divine. Kine, the Nordic goddess of the sky and wind, is the deity through whom mortals were originally gifted the Thu'um. A dragon priest whose name contains an implicit consumption of that goddess is making a statement. This is someone who rejected the source of mortal fur and chose a different allegiance. He is found in White Ridge Barrow, and his specialty is frost magic. His mask provides bonuses to frost damage and frost enchanting. He can summon Seekers, the tentacled servants of Hermaeus Mora, which places him cosmologically within Mora's influence even beyond his allegiance to Miraak. Dukan does not use a staff, which sets him apart from most dragon priests. He is a pure caster, dependent entirely on the ice magic he channels. He is in some ways the most distilled version of what a dragon priest was, power concentrated in magical practice, nothing else. Zaha name means sword blood in dragon language. He is found in Bloodskull Barrow at the end of a quest called The Final Descent, which begins in Raven Rock Mine when miners break through a sealed door. He is the only dragon priest in the base game, and its DLC who scales with the Dragonborn's level, though capped at 60. Every other dragon priest is fixed in power. Zaha grows to meet whoever faces him. He specializes in shock magic and can summon Seekers from Apocrypha. His mask enhances shock damage and shock enchanting. He is, in a mechanical sense, the most variable of the three acolyte priests. You might fight him at a stage of the game where he is moderately challenging, or you might walk into Bloodskull Barrow at a low level and find something far beyond your ability to handle. The Bloodskull Blade, a unique sword found in the same barrow, deals additional damage to him, specifically when its energy projectile attacks are used. The three of them together represent something interesting: the only dragon priests who chose their allegiance. The 8 dragon priests of Skyrim's mainland served the cult because that was what they were born into and raised within. Azadal, Dukaan, and Zaha left the mainstream of the dragon cult service to follow a dragonborn who had himself left the cult. They were dissenters within a dissent, and like Miraak, they ended up sealed and frozen in the earth for thousands of years, waiting. Part 6, Vahalok the Jailer, the Faithful Warden and the Battle that Split the World. If Miraak is the story of power turned toward rebellion, then Vahalok is the story of power turned toward duty, and the contrast between them is one of the most quietly resonant things in Skyrim's lore. Vahalok means guardian in dragon language. He was the dragon priest who defeated Miraak. He was loyal to the dragon cult not out of blindness or inability to see the cult's corruption, but out of something more like principle, the belief that order, however imperfect, was preferable to the chaos that rebellion would produce. When Miraak began his rebellion, using the Bend Will shout against dragons and gathering followers among the dragon priests, it was Vahalok who was sent to stop him. The battle between them is described in Skald legend as one of the most catastrophic magical conflicts in Solstheim's history. The two of them fought across the island. Their clash of powers was not contained to any single location. It spread. It altered things. The most dramatic consequence of their battle is this. Solstheim used to be connected to the mainland of Skyrim. The northeastern island that players of the Dragonborn DLC visit was, in the Merethic era, a peninsula, part of the same landmass. The conflict between Miraak and Valak was so destructive, involved such raw magical force, that the land between Solstheim and Skyrim broke apart. The sea rushed in. The peninsula became an island. The strait that separates Solstheim from Skyrim's northeast coast is the permanent geographical scar of a fight between two dragon priests. Vahalok won. Miraak was defeated and transported to Apocrypha by Hermaeus Mora. And then the dragons, in recognition of his loyalty, made Valak the ruler of Solstheim. They rewarded him with dominion over the island. But they also bound him with an oath. He was to watch the island forever, to stand guard against the possibility of Miraak's return, and to maintain the seal against whatever influence might leak through from Apocrypha. He died eventually, as mortals do, but his dedication was so complete, so total, that he became undead without choosing it. His duty outlasted his life. He is found in his barrow on Solstheim, still keeping his vigil thousands of years after the reason for that vigil should have been finished. When the Dragonborn encounters Valak in the Fourth Era, they are fighting a dragon priest who has been maintaining a purpose for millennia beyond the natural end of both his life and the civilization he served. The dragon cult is gone. The dragons are gone, or were gone. Alduin's return has changed that, but Valak's oath predates all of that. He is the faithful one, the one who was told to stay and stayed. His mask is different from the 8 masks of the mainland. It has no enchantment. It is simply a guardian's face, carved and worn and present. The absence of magical enhancement on Valak's mask is perhaps the most eloquent detail about him. He was not given gifts. He was given a responsibility, and he carried it in silence for longer than most civilizations last. Part 7. Karstag, the Frost Giant King. Across 2 games and 3 centuries, there is no quest marker for this encounter. There is no NPC who will tell you about it unless you dig very deep into optional dialogue. There is no journal entry guiding you toward it, and if you find it, you will very possibly die, multiple times. Karstag is not a figure from Skyrim's mythology. He is a figure from Morrowind's history, and his presence in the Dragonborn DLC is one of the most loving pieces of cross-game continuity in the Elder Scrolls series. Let's begin with who he was. In the Third Era, year 427, on the island of Solstheim, there was a frost giant who ruled Castle Karstag in the northwest of the island. He was not merely a large, hostile creature in the way most giants are represented in Skyrim. He was a king. The Reekling tribes of Solstheim, the small, aggressive, blue-skinned creatures that populate the island's more remote corners, served under him. He was their protector and their lord. In the events of Morrowind's Blood Moon expansion, the player character, the Nerevarine, came into conflict with Castle Karstag and ultimately defeated Karstag in combat. Canonically, this happened in the Third Era, year 427. Karstag was slain. His castle stood but was left without its master. 200 years later, in the Fourth Era, the castle is ruins. Time and weather and neglect have reduced it to broken walls half swallowed by ice. The Reekling tribes still live in the area, but they are leaderless, and the ruins they occupy are a ghost of what the castle once was. Karstag's skull is in a glacial cave to the northeast of the ruins, not on display, not guarded with ceremony, just there, in the back of a cave full of Reeklings, on a ledge. His body has long since been consumed by whatever natural processes work on giants after death, but his skull remains. The skull is the key. If you find the skull and carry it to the ruins of Castle Karstag, and if you place it on the throne that still stands amid the rubble, something begins to happen. The air changes. The cold intensifies, and Karstag's ghost rises. He is enormous. He carries a club. His stomp can send the player flying across the battlefield the way a regular giant's attack does, but with the added dimension of being a spectral frost giant at level 90. He has 4,000 health points. He is immune to frost and to poison and to paralysis. He regenerates health. In the middle of combat, he can summon ice wraiths to assist him. He does not speak. He does not acknowledge who you are or why you have called him back. He simply fights. He is not a sophisticated encounter in a narrative sense. He is a pure test of capability, one of the hardest encounters in the entire game, available entirely through optional exploration with no guidance. Why does he come? The lore does not say explicitly, but the act of placing his skull on his throne carries a certain logic. You have given him his seat back. You have restored, in a symbolic sense, the thing that was taken from him 200 years ago, his place of rule. He rises to defend it, or to challenge the person who has dared to invoke it, or perhaps simply because the call of a throne is something a king cannot ignore even in death. When Karstag is defeated, the reward is not loot in the traditional sense. He drops nothing. What you earn is the ability to summon him 3 times, permanently, using a power granted after the fight. You can call the ghost of the Frost Giant King to fight beside you, 3 times, and then he is gone. The summon is not renewable. The 3 uses feel intentional, not unlimited, not once, 3 times, as if the Frost Giant has agreed to honor a debt and nothing more. You called him back. He lost. He will serve 3 times in acknowledgement of that defeat, and then he is done. The community's reaction to Karstag documented in player discussions and gaming forums over the years, tends to fall into two categories: total shock that he exists and was never mentioned, and enormous respect for how hard the fight is. There are forum posts about players on their fifth attempt, players who prepared for 10 minutes before the fight and still got launched off the terrain. He sits comfortably in the conversation about the hardest boss in Skyrim, alongside the Ebony Warrior, and he is harder to find than any of them. He is the king who still refuses to fall. He is here because someone who played Morrowind loved him enough to bring him back. And that detail, more than his power level or his hidden location, is what makes him stay with you. Part 8. The Ebony Warrior. What it means to want a perfect death. At level 80, something unusual happens. A figure in black armor approaches you in one of Skyrim's hold capitals. He is a Redguard. He is the most formidably equipped NPC you will ever see walking casually through a city street, and he says something that sounds like a threat but is actually a request. He has done everything that can be done. There are no more quests, no more villains, no more challenges. He has traveled the world of Skyrim and exhausted its possibilities, and he has one thing left he wants: a death worthy of his life. He wants to go to Sovngarde with honor, and only you, the Dragonborn, can give that to him. He tells you to meet him at his last vigil when you are ready. The Ebony Warrior is one of the strangest and most philosophically interesting encounters in any game, let alone Skyrim. He is a boss who is not an antagonist. He has done nothing wrong. He is not guarding anything you need. He is not standing between you and a goal. He is asking you for a favor that will end his life, and the favor is, specifically, to kill him in a fight worthy of both of you. The mechanics of the encounter are designed to make that fight genuinely difficult. His armor provides 50% resistance to fire, frost, and shock. As a Redguard, he has a natural 50% resistance to poison. He can use unrelenting force. He has restoration spells that allow him to heal mid-combat. He has frost magic. He has a health-absorbing sword. He has ebony flesh active. He has a perk that reflects damage back from power attacks, which means certain fighting styles will hurt you as much as they hurt him. He does not have infinite health. He can be defeated. But the design philosophy is that defeating him should require actual effort, real preparation, real thought about approach. He is level 80. He scales to the Dragonborn. He closes ground fast. He is not a puzzle boss. He is simply a very, very good warrior who has spent his entire life getting better at what he does. And when he dies, he says, "At last, Sovngarde." The lore question this raises is genuinely complicated. Sovngarde is the Nordic afterlife, specifically for Nords and those who fought in a Nordic tradition and were honored by Shor, the Norse-inspired dead god who presides over the Hall of Valor. The Ebony Warrior is a Redguard. Redguards have their own afterlife tradition, connected to the far shores. By cultural and theological standards, he should not be going to Sovngarde. And yet, Elder Scrolls lore is specific on one point about the afterlife. Belief has power. In a universe where the gods were shaped by mortal worship, where a mortal could become a Daedric prince by perfectly imitating one, where theology is not a fixed external reality, but a negotiated one between mortals and divine forces. A Redguard who has spent his entire life studying Nordic traditions, fighting in Nordic ways, honoring Nordic values, might reasonably expect Shor to notice him, might reasonably expect the Hall of Valor to have a place for someone who lived as a warrior in the full sense the tradition demands. He does not appear in Sovngarde when you enter during the main quest, even if you have already defeated him. This could be a technical oversight. It could be intentional. Maybe he is there, but the game simply does not have him visible. Or maybe he is still waiting. Maybe the warrior's code takes longer to resolve than a simple combat victory and subsequent death. There is one small detail about the Ebony Warrior that almost everyone misses. He has the same face as Nazir, the Dark Brotherhood assassin in Skyrim. Not a similar face, the exact same face model. Whether this is intentional, a subtle hint at some connection, or simply reused assets in the engine, is a debate that has lasted since the game shipped. The official answer has never been given. The ambiguity is, at this point, probably deliberate. He is the final boss Skyrim gives you, after you have done everything else. Not a cosmic threat, not a world-ending monster, a warrior who is tired and wants to rest. The most human ending to an inhuman adventure. Part 9. Volthuriol, Dornavir, and the Dragon Bosses, found in darkness. Not all dragon encounters in Skyrim happen in the open sky. Not all of them are announced with music and a roar from above. Some of them are found in places where dragons should not logically be, and the question of how they got there and why they stayed is part of what makes them so worth talking about. Volthuriol is the most hidden dragon in the base game. He lives in Blackreach. Blackreach is an enormous subterranean cavern beneath Skyrim's surface, accessible through several Dwemer ruins. It is an archaeological and biological impossibility, a space large enough to contain entire cities, with its own artificial sun, its own ecosystem of glowing mushrooms and subterranean fauna, all constructed or perhaps shaped by the Dwemer civilization that vanished in the First Era. The scale of it is hard to appreciate until you are actually standing in it and looking at the towers in the distance. It was built as a highway, essentially, a way for the Dwemer to move between their major settlements underground. It contains ruins, Falmer settlements, steam vents, and the bones of Dwemer engineering. It is one of the most visually impressive environments in the game, and somewhere in its depths, in the center of the vast cavern, there is a yellow orb floating above the Hall of Rumination. Volthuriol does not announce himself. He does not fly down when you enter Blackreach. He is simply there, inert and invisible to most players who are focused on the main objective of retrieving the Elder Scroll from the Tower of Mizark. The way to summon him is entirely non-obvious. You must aim the unrelenting force, shout at the yellow orb. When you do, a sound rings through Blackreach, a resonance that carries through the whole cavern, and then Volthuriol drops from wherever he was resting and begins to fly toward you. He is an ancient dragon in the game's terminology, powerful, but not the hardest encounter available. What makes him remarkable is not his difficulty, but his situation. A dragon, underground, in a Dwemer cavern. How long has he been there? How did he get there? Why has he not left? The lore offers suggestions, but not certainties. Blackreach was, by the time of the Fourth Era, claimed by Falmer, who had been down there since the Dwemer vanished, and who had been fighting something they called the War of the Crag against the Dwemer's automated defenses. But before the Falmer, there were the Dwemer, and the Dwemer had a documented interest in dragons and their sonic architecture. The Thuum is, at its most fundamental level, a manipulation of reality through sound and resonance. The Dwemer were also practitioners of something called tonal architecture, which involved manipulating reality through sound and resonance. There is a significant overlap there. Could the Dwemer have captured Volthuriol? Could they have studied him, contained him, used his draconic voice as part of their architectural experiments? Could the yellow orb above the Hall of Rumination be some kind of containment device, and the unrelenting force shout, a particular frequency of Thuum, be what disrupts it and wakes him? None of this is explicitly stated in any text. But the Dwemer ruins are full of ancient experiments whose purposes are only partially legible from the wreckage they left behind. A captive dragon fits the profile of something the Dwemer would attempt. Then there is Dornavir. His name translates to curse never dying. He is an undead dragon. Not a zombie in the shambling sense, but something specifically constructed by a deal he made with an entity called the Ideal Masters. The Ideal Masters are the rulers of the Soul Cairn, the plane of oblivion where trapped souls end up after their soul gems are used for enchanting. They are ancient beings of unknown origin who have transformed themselves entirely into the crystals that dominate the Soul Cairn's landscape, absorbing the essence of trapped souls perpetually. They are not gods. They are not Daedric princes. They are something else, something that operated in the space between defined categories of power in the Elder Scrolls cosmology. Dornavir was a living dragon once, in the Dawn Era, when dragons were fighting each other for territory and dominance before the Dragon War. He wanted an edge. He discovered the Ideal Masters and their Soul Cairn, and he negotiated a deal with them. In exchange for access to necromantic power that would give him an advantage over rival dragons, he would guard the Soul Cairn for them. He did not fully understand what he was agreeing to, or perhaps he understood and thought he could manage it. Either way, the terms of the deal revealed themselves in practice. He could never leave. The Soul Cairn is a place where the undead cannot die, and the living slowly wither, where the energy of the realm itself drains vitality from anything that should not be there. Dornavir is in the Soul Cairn not as a resident, but as a prisoner who made his own cage. When the Dragonborn arrives in the Soul Cairn during the Dawnguard quest line, they are looking for Valerica, a vampire who has imprisoned herself there to hide from her husband, Lord Harkon. Durne Vir is Valerica's jailer, not because he chose to be specifically, but because the Ideal Masters assigned him to guard her prison, and guarding is what he does. It is the only role he has been allowed to perform for as long as he can remember. After the Dragonborn defeats him, something happens that Durnevir seems genuinely surprised by. He can be partially freed, not fully, because the Soul Cairn's hold on him is complete, but enough to be summoned into the living world for brief periods. The Dragonborn can call him as an ally, and every time Durnevir arrives in Tamriel, his dialogue reflects something that approaches wonder. He describes what it feels like to breathe air that is not the Soul Cairn's dead atmosphere. He describes the sky with the tone of someone who had forgotten that sky was something that could exist. He teaches the Dragonborn the Soul Tear Shout, a three-word thum that rips the soul from a target and immediately raises them as an undead servant. It is, functionally, a shout of necromancy, the first and only purely necromantic shout in the game. He passes it on because it is his to pass on, a piece of the knowledge he gained from his deal with the Ideal Masters, and because the Dragonborn has given him something he had not had in longer than he can measure, a reason. Part 10. The Reaper, the Soul Cairn, and its hidden horrors. The Soul Cairn is one of the most philosophically disturbing locations in Skyrim. Not because it is visually terrifying, though it is certainly that. A purple-gray wasteland littered with ruined structures, haunted by shades wandering in confused loops, dotted with enormous purple crystals that drain the life from anyone who walks too close. The horror of the Soul Cairn is not in its appearance, it is in what it represents. Everyone whose soul ends up in a soul gem and is used for enchanting goes to the Soul Cairn. Think about the frequency with which players use soul gems in Skyrim, enchanting weapons, filling enchanted items, recharging staves. It is one of the most routine activities in the game. You fight a creature, you cast Soul Trap on it, it dies, and a soul gem fills, and you put it in your inventory to use later. Clean, transactional, mechanically simple. The Soul Cairn reveals the moral dimension of that transaction. Every soul trapped in a soul gem, every consciousness that was inside a living creature when it died with Soul Trap active, ends up in this place. The shades wandering the Soul Cairn are the former occupants of soul gems used throughout Skyrim's history. They are not resting. They are not at peace. They are trapped in an infinite flat gray wasteland, unable to move on to whatever afterlife they were meant for, unable to return to life, simply existing in a dimensionless holding pattern forever. The Ideal Masters feed on them. The purple crystals that drain the Dragonborn's health are the physical manifestation of the Ideal Masters' hunger, constantly drawing energy from the trapped souls around them. The shades do not notice or understand what is happening to them. They simply wander, confused, half-aware, endlessly. Within this environment, there is a hidden encounter that most players of the Dawnguard DLC never find: the Reaper. To summon the Reaper, you must find 3 Reaper gem fragments scattered across the Soul Cairn. They are found in chests, near the bases of the larger purple crystals, the ones that drain your health most aggressively. There is no quest marker, there is no hint from any NPC. The souls wandering the Soul Cairn mention a Reaper in vague terms when spoken to, as if it is something they have heard about but not seen, a rumor even in a dead world. With all 3 fragments, you return to a specific building in the Soul Cairn called the Reaper's Lair. It is an ominous enclosed structure that stands apart from the other ruins. You place the fragments on the altar inside, and the Reaper is summoned. He is enormous. He wears the same robes and cowl as an executioner, the kind you see at a headsman's block in any major city in Skyrim. He carries an iron battle axe. His eyes glow red in the shadow of his hood. He spits green slime in a ranged attack and calls boneman minions to fight alongside him. When he dies, he drops 3 empty black soul gems, a battle axe, and a Daedra heart. That Daedra heart is significant. Daedra hearts are the physical residue of slain Daedra. The Reaper, whatever he is cosmologically, contains something Daedric within him. He is not simply a guardian conjured from the Soul Cairn's ambient energy. He is something infused with Daedric essence, placed here by someone with the ability to create such an entity. Who placed him there? Why does the Soul Cairn have an executioner? What crime merits execution in a plane of imprisonment? The lore does not answer these questions directly, but the Reaper's presence suggests that the Soul Cairn is not simply a passive holding ground. It has architecture, it has systems. Someone, whether the ideal masters or some prior authority, designed this place with purpose. The Reaper is the enforcement arm of that purpose, the mechanism by which anything that threatens the Soul Cairn's function is removed. He is level 85. He has no specific resistances and no specific weaknesses. His difficulty scales modestly with the player. He is not the hardest encounter in the game, but he is deeply hidden and deeply contextual, a boss that exists not as a challenge for its own sake, but as a revelation of what the Soul Cairn is and how it operates. Meeting him changes how you think about all those soul gems in your inventory. Elsewhere in the Soul Cairn, if you wander long enough, you will find a wandering ghost and a skull. The ghost is the spirit of a man who is separated from his horse, the horse called Arvak, who died in the Soul Cairn while carrying his owner, and whose skull became lodged here. The man, unable to leave and unable to find his horse, asked the Dragonborn to recover the skull and return it. Arvak is not a boss, he is a reward. But the encounter that grants access to him is found in the Soul Cairn's darkest, most remote corners, and the act of finding the skull and returning it, of completing that small, specific kindness in a place defined by permanent sorrow and unfulfilled longing, is one of the most memorable optional moments the game offers. The spectral horse you gain, glowing with cold blue light, undying and unsummonable through normal means, is in many ways the best mount in the game. He exists because someone in the Soul Cairn loved him, and someone outside it was willing to wander through the gray wasteland looking. Part 11. The Twin Dragons of the Forgotten Vale, and other hidden encounters. There is a location in the Dawnguard DLC that is only accessible after significant progress through the quest line, and which most players rush through because it is a destination rather than a place to linger. The Forgotten Vale is a secluded, pristine valley hidden beyond a cave called Darkfall Passage, entirely enclosed, surrounded by mountains that keep it isolated from the rest of Skyrim. It was a sacred space of the Snow Elves, the ancient elven civilization that predated the Falmer. The twisted feral creatures players encounter in Dwemer ruins across Skyrim were once a sophisticated, beautiful, accomplished civilization. The Forgotten Vale was their holy site, their protected place, maintained in secret for thousands of years. When you walk through it, you see what they had before everything went wrong: frozen waterfalls, ice formations of impossible delicacy, ancient elven architecture that combines grace and practicality in a way nothing else in Skyrim does. And at the center of the Vale, there is a frozen lake. The ice is thick and ancient. The word wall at the edge of the lake guards a shout called Drain Vitality. Walk close to the word wall, and the lake explodes. Two dragons, Naaslarum and Voslarum, have been resting beneath the ice. Their names translate to Toothwater Twin and Clawwater Twin respectively, names that encode exactly what they are: a matched pair residing in the water together. They burst through the ice simultaneously and attack. There is no warning. There is no buildup. One moment you are walking toward a word wall in a beautiful, peaceful valley, and the next you are fighting two dragons at once on an ice field, while the water that concealed them is still settling. This encounter, almost universally, surprises players who do not know it is coming. Even players who have been through the Forgotten Vale multiple times sometimes forget the specifics of when it triggers. The game earns the surprise because the Forgotten Vale is so serene up to that point, so deliberately quiet and beautiful that the ambush has no precedent to warn you. The lore around Naaslarum and Voslarum is genuinely interesting. They appear to have been there since before the Vale was Snow Elf territory, possibly since the Dragon War. There is a theory in the Skyrim community that has circulated since the DLC released. These twin dragons may have some connection to the Volkihar vampires, the ancient and powerful vampire clan that makes their home in a sea cave castle off the northwest coast of Skyrim. The twin dragons share the Drain Vitality shout with the vampire lord form. They rested in water, which vampires are said to find necessary in certain lore texts. Their names contain the same ancient dragon resonance that the Volkihar carry. Whether this connection is intentional or a coincidence of design is never confirmed, but the twin dragons in the ice feel like they were guarding something, waiting for something, maintaining a watch over the Vale that predates even the Snow Elves' presence there. That they attack the Dragonborn specifically when the Dragonborn approaches the word wall, as if the word wall itself is what they are protecting, suggests that the ancient draconic administration of Skyrim's word walls, the system by which knowledge of the Thu'um was carved into stone and guarded by a dragon's presence, was still operating here thousands of years after the Dragon War ended everywhere else. Two more named dragons are worth discussing here, both of them carrying interesting stories in the DLC material. Krosulha is encountered just outside the Dwemer ruin of Nchardak during the Dragonborn DLC quest The Path of Knowledge. He appears without any particular build-up, simply launching an attack. What distinguishes him lore-wise is the source of his aggression. He is acting on Mirak's orders. By the 4th era, Mirak cannot physically act in Tamriel, but he can influence dragons. He instructed Krosulha to destroy the Dragonborn. A dragon being used as an assassin by a Dragonborn who has been trapped in a Daedric realm for thousands of years is a strange image, but it reflects the scope of Mirak's influence even in his confinement. Saratar is the dragon you ride to reach Mirak in Apocrypha. He is one of 3 dragons who serves as Mirak's guard in the Daedric realm, and the way you turn him to your purpose illustrates everything the Dragonborn DLC is about. The Bend Will Shout, learned over the course of the questline, allows the Dragonborn to do exactly what Mirak himself could do, to override a dragon's will. Saratar submits. He flies you to the summit of Apocrypha where Mirak waits. And when Mirak's power fails and he is killed by Mora, Saratar's fate is left unaddressed. He is simply there, in Apocrypha, with no master, which in the Elder Scrolls cosmology is either freedom or a new form of loss. Part 12. The Named Dragons of Alduin's Army. When Alduin returned to Skyrim in the 4th era, he did not simply appear and begin threatening people. He had a plan. He went to the burial mounds scattered across Skyrim, the circular earthworks maintained for thousands of years by surviving members of the dragon cult, and he began raising his army. Each mound contained a specific dragon. Each dragon had a name, a history, a reason for being where they were. Alduin was not creating new soldiers. He was restoring a military force that had been dormant since the Dragon War, and the Dragonborn who absorbs their souls upon killing them is not simply gaining power. They are ensuring those dragons can never be part of another army again. Let's walk through the named members of Alduin's resurrected forces. Sa-Loknir is the first dragon the Dragonborn sees resurrected, during the quest A Blade in the Dark. Delphine has led the Dragonborn to a burial mound in Eastmarch, and they watch Alduin perform the resurrection rite. The name Sa-Loknir means Phantom Scale Dominate. He was one of Alduin's original soldiers in the Merethic era. His resurrection is the first demonstration of what Alduin is actually doing, not creating new dragons, but reclaiming old ones. When he dies, Alduin is visibly displeased, the first loss. Vain Turuth means literally victory battle dominate. He is resurrected by Alduin, west of Onga's Mill, during the quest Elder Knowledge. His burial mound is in one of Skyrim's more accessible areas, which means that if the player completes the prerequisite quest at a point where they have not yet explored that area, Vain Turuth will begin actively searching for them. He does not stay near his mound. He moves. This makes him the most territorially aggressive of the named resurrected dragons, the one most likely to ambush a player who is not expecting a specific named encounter. Vuljotnok's name means Dark Maw Eat. He is an ancient green dragon found near Granite Hill in Whiterun Hold. The Atlas of Dragons, an in-game text, records his death in the Dragon War, in terms that do not quite align with other accounts of his history, suggesting that either the Atlas is incomplete or that Vuljotnok's story was contested even among those who studied dragons professionally. He is one of the straighter encounters among the named resurrection dragons, not particularly strong relative to other encounters at the level where the player would likely find him, but distinctive for the green coloration that sets him apart visually from the fire and frost dragon variants. Nahaglaive, whose name translates to something close to Fury Burn Dominate, is found in a burial mound west of Rorikstead. He breathes fire. He is scaled appropriately for a mid to late game encounter. His burial location in the relatively gentle farmland of Whiterun Hold creates an interesting juxtaposition. An ancient dragon of war, restored to life, rising from the ground near the turnip fields and goat pastures of a small Nordic agricultural community. Relanakiv is encountered at Autumn Watch Tower in the Rift. His name contains words relating to bones and running, which in dragon language carries connotations of escape or swiftness. He is another of Alduin's resurrected soldiers, returning to a world that has changed entirely since his burial. There is something worth sitting with across all of these encounters. These dragons were buried by loyal members of the dragon cult who believed Alduin would return. The Draugr that guard the burial mounds, the animated corpses of ancient Nordic warriors who served the cult, are there specifically to protect these graves until that return. And Alduin did return. The vigil was not wasted. The faithfulness was rewarded from the perspective of those who kept the graves. But what the resurrected dragons return to is not the Skyrim they knew. Humans have built cities and holds and a complex civilization in the 1,000+ years since the Dragon War. The dragons who were gods and rulers in the Merethic era return to find themselves hunted by people who have learned, through the long legacy of Paarthurnax's gift and the Greybeard's practice, how to fight back. The Dragon War was ended by humans learning to use the voice. The Fourth Era's conflicts prove that the lesson held. Every dragon soul the Dragonborn absorbs is one fewer soldier in Alduin's army. Every burial mound the Dragonborn visits before Alduin can means Alduin's plan contracts a little further. The main quest is, at its strategic heart, a race between the Dragonborn's ability to absorb souls and Alduin's ability to raise them. And every named dragon in the list above represents one more round in that race. Part 13, or Kendor and the Afflicted. A boss made from a god's mercy, there are boss encounters in Skyrim that are famous. Alduin, Miraak, Karstag, and then there are boss encounters that most players simply killed without ever wondering what the creature actually was or why it existed. Or Chendor is the latter kind. He is found in Bethardoms, a Dwemer ruin in the Reach, one of the larger and more elaborately constructed Dwemer complexes accessible in the base game. He is the primary target of the Daedric quest for Periite, one of the 16 Daedric princes. Periite is not among the better-known princes. He is associated with pestilence, with disease, with the lowest orders of oblivion, and his physical form is a dragon, which causes endless confusion among players who do not realize he is a separate entity from Alduin. The Afflicted are a group of people who prayed to Periite for deliverance. He answered. He sent a plague that twisted their bodies, made them projectile vomit green bile that corrodes whatever it touches, and relocated their souls to his realm in oblivion while leaving them technically alive. The Afflicted in Bethardoms are the inhabitants of that answered prayer, people who asked a Daedric prince for help and received something they did not expect, a mercy that looks indistinguishable from a curse. Orchendor led them to Bethardoms. He organized them, gave them purpose, made the Dwemer ruin into a functioning community of the diseased. Periite used him as an instrument, and then Periite decided, for reasons the game does not fully explain, that Orchendor had become an independent variable. He had stopped being a perfect conduit and started having his own ideas. So, Periite sent the Dragonborn to kill him. Orchendor is a Breton mage. He can teleport around the arena, which makes him distinctly more dangerous than his appearance suggests. He reflects magic, making him difficult for pure spellcasters to damage. He uses frost and shock spells and summons Atronachs. He is a genuinely interesting mid-game boss mechanically, and his location in the depths of a Dwemer ruin gives the fight an atmosphere that feels genuinely ancient and wrong. But the thing to carry with you after meeting him is not the fight. It is the community of Afflicted outside his chamber, organized and functional in their grotesque way. A group of people whose deepest wish, to be noticed and helped by something beyond the mortal world, was granted in the worst possible form. They live, they serve, they suffer, and the prince they prayed to sent an outsider to kill their leader because the leader had developed something Daedric princes cannot tolerate in their servants: independent thought. Part 14. Mercer Frey, Carlia, and the Thieves Guild's betrayal boss. The Thieves Guild questline in Skyrim builds toward a confrontation that is, structurally, a boss fight, but one that carries more emotional weight than most, because it is framed as a betrayal by a trusted figure rather than an external threat. Mercer Frey is the guildmaster of the Thieves Guild when the Dragonborn joins. He is composed, skilled, dismissive, and professional. He is the picture of a successful career criminal who has turned competence into authority, and he has been robbing the guild of its divine protection for years. The Thieves Guild, as the game's lore explains, exists under the patronage of Nocturnal, the Daedric prince of night and luck. The Skeleton Key, one of Nocturnal's artifacts, was in the guild's possession for generations, and it served as the physical anchor of Nocturnal's blessing. As long as it was kept by the guild, Nocturnal's favor expressed itself as the guild's legendary luck. Things went right, jobs succeeded, guards looked the wrong way, informants were honest. Mercer Frey stole it. He stole the skeleton key from the guild's vault, using his position, and used it personally for years, enriching himself while the guild's luck quietly failed and its power eroded. By the time the Dragonborn joins, the guild is in visible decline, and nobody quite understands why. The betrayal was internal and invisible. As a boss encounter, Mercer Frey is fought in Irkingthand, a Dwemer ruin, surrounded by the enormous stone face of a statue. He has access to the power of the skeleton key, which makes him essentially a master thief, with divine enhancement. He can turn invisible, he is supernaturally difficult to detect, and he can deal devastating backstab damage. The environment around the fight includes water that rises as the fight progresses, flooding the chamber and creating urgency beyond simply defeating him. When he dies, the water continues to rise, and the Dragonborn must escape. Carlia retrieves the key, and the guild begins the process of returning it to Nocturnal's realm, to restore the divine favor that Mercer spent on himself. What makes Mercer Frey narratively interesting as a boss is what he represents as an endpoint, the personification of betrayal inside a community that operates on trust despite its criminal nature. The Thieves Guild works because its members do not steal from each other. They have a code. The Ebony Blade, in the Daedric questlines, powers itself on betrayal of trust and murder of companions. Mercer Frey is the person who embodied the Ebony Blade's philosophy inside the one organization that most required trust to function. He did not simply steal gold. He stole the thing that made the guild possible. Part 15. The Red Eagle and the Story of Reach's First Freedom Fighter. In the Reach, among the Forsworn territories and the stone-red landscape of one of Skyrim's most politically complicated holds, there is a cave called Rebel's Cairn. To unlock it and face what waits inside, you must first read a book called The Legend of Red Eagle. The book is scattered across Skyrim in small numbers. If you never find it, you will walk past the cave forever and never know what you missed. Red Eagle was, in life, a hero of the Reach, a Reachman chieftain who fought against an invading force that sought to conquer the Hold's native people. The lore around him is deliberately vague in its specifics. The invaders are unnamed, the era is imprecise. The battles are told in the elevated language of legend rather than historical record. What is clear is that Red Eagle fought, and that he made a bargain to win. The bargain was with a hagraven. In the Reach, hagravens, ancient bird women who are the result of a deliberate transformation ritual, serve as the spiritual leaders of Forsworn culture. They have power, they broker power, and they charge for it in ways that alter whoever accepts their terms. Red Eagle gained power against his enemies. He won his battles. He drove the invaders back. And then what he had become in doing so, transformed by the hagraven's influence, became the problem. He was not the same. He was something that victory had made worse than the enemy he defeated. His story ends in his burial in Rebel's Cairn, his sword, Red Eagle's fury, sealed with him. In death, he became a legend, the first hero of the Reach, the prototype for the Forsworn's self-conception as resistance fighters rather than bandits. When you fight him, you are fighting a Draugr version of a figure who, in life, carried the weight of a whole people's hope for freedom. Red Eagle's fury is a sword with a fire enchantment, and it is a fine weapon at the level you are likely to find it. But the game adds one more step. The sword can be upgraded into Red Eagle's Bane at a specific altar, but only if you have completed the quest. The upgraded version has stronger fire damage and, more importantly, the lore framing of being a completed redemption rather than a transitional object, the weapon of the hero restored to what it was meant to be. The Forsworn who worship Red Eagle's memory, who leave offerings at his cairn, and who treat his legend as the founding document of Reach resistance, have no idea that a Dragonborn can come and kill him and walk away with his sword. The gap between legend and reality is one of the Reach's most quietly tragic dimensions. Part 16. Harkon, the Vampire King, and the Architecture of Darkness. Lord Harkon of the Volkihar is the primary antagonist of the Dawnguard DLC and one of the most elaborately constructed villains in Skyrim. He is not simply a powerful vampire who needs to be stopped. He is the culmination of centuries of Volkihar ambition and the living expression of what pure-blood vampirism, the ancient lineage descended directly from Molag Bal's original act, can become over a long enough period of time. The Volkihar are vampire royalty. Their bloodline traces directly to Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination and enslavement, who created vampirism in the first place through an act of cosmic violation against a mortal woman. Pureblood vampires like the Volkihar carry ancient power that diluted strains of vampirism cannot access. Harkon has had centuries to develop and refine this power, and the result is a vampire lord form of genuine capability. Wings, life drain, an army of lesser vampires and thralls. His castle, Volkihar Keep, is located on a sea cave beneath an island off the northwest coast of Skyrim. It is accessible only by boat, and the boat is only available because the Dawnguard questline guides you to it. The castle itself is Gothic in the truest sense. Enormous stone halls, portraits of past masters, servants who are perpetually on the edge of human and monster, and a culture that has evolved in isolation for so long that it has become something entirely its own. Harkon's plan is to use a Khajiit moth priest named Dexion Evicus to read a set of Elder Scrolls that will reveal the location of Oriel's bow, a divine artifact. With the bow and a specific type of arrow called blood-cursed arrows, crafted from the blood of a Bosmer descended from the original heroes who wielded the bow, he can shoot the sun and permanently darken it. That is the endgame. Permanent night over Tamriel, an end to the sun that damages vampires and limits their activity. A world remade for their comfort. It is a plan that has been in development for centuries, built on prophecy and patience, and it is within reach by the time the Dragonborn becomes involved. The fight with Harkon takes place in his own castle's great hall, and it shifts between phases. He transforms into vampire lord form. He creates bats to heal himself. He can summon gargoyles. He uses powerful magic. The architecture of his home, the portraits, the coffins, the fire-lit corridors are all visible in the background while you fight him in the foreground. When he dies, Serena, his daughter, reflects on his end with genuine complexity. She is not simply relieved. She is grieving something that she had wanted to be different. Harkon was not incapable of love. He was capable of it for her specifically, though his expression of that love bent to his obsession. His death resolves a threat. It does not resolve all the damage done. Harkon drops the Vampire Lord power for those who choose to embrace vampirism during the DLC. He drops a blade and armor with his enchantments, but the most consequential thing he leaves behind is Oriel's bow itself, which the Dragonborn can use for its opposite intended purpose with sun-hallowed arrows, not to darken the sun, but to dramatically amplify its effect against vampires, turning a normal source of mild damage into a devastating weapon against undead. The bow that was meant to end sunlight becomes the tool that defends it. Part 17. The Forge Master and other Dwemer mechanical bosses. Not every boss in Skyrim is a creature of flesh or an undead lich. Some of them are machines. And the machines of the Dwemer, still operating thousands of years after their creators vanished, are among the most philosophically interesting enemies in the game. The Forge Master is encountered during the Dawnguard questlines Lost to the Ages quest, deep in the ruins of Bethalft, south of Ivarstead. The quest involves recovering 4 Ethereum shards from across Skyrim to assemble at the Ethereum Forge, the ancient Dwemer furnace capable of working a rare crystalline mineral with unique magical properties. The Forge Master is the ruin's automated defense system, brought to its ultimate expression, a dwarven centurion larger and more powerful than any other centurion in the game. It guards the forge. It does not know or care that 4,000 years have passed since the Dwemer built it and assigned it this duty. It does not know that the Dwemer are gone. It does not know that the civilization whose engineering it represents has been reduced to mystery and silence. It is simply there, and its purpose is still active, and it will discharge that purpose against anyone who tries to use what it protects. The Forge Master breathes fire in a cone in front of it. It uses a powerful arm slam. Its health pool is substantial. It is one of the more genuinely difficult optional boss encounters in the DLC, and its setting inside the Forge Chamber, surrounded by flowing Ethereum and the evidence of the most sophisticated craftsmanship in Tamrielic history, makes it visually striking. The Dwarven Centurion type, which the Forge Master exemplifies, is the most powerful automated warrior the Dwemer built. Standard Centurions are already formidably dangerous. The Forge Master is described through the quest's framing as something specifically designed for Forge defense, a custom unit rather than a standard deployment. After defeating the Forge Master, the Ethereum Forge can be used to create one of three items: the Ethereal Crown, which allows two standing stone effects simultaneously; the Ethereal Shield, which phases enemies out of existence temporarily on a bash; or the Ethereal Staff, which summons Dwemer automatons as allies. Each of these items is a direct translation of Dwemer engineering principles into usable form, systems built on resonance and precise mechanical function, made accessible to the people who inherited the ruins left behind. The civilization is gone, but its tools remain, still operating, still capable, still more advanced than anything the Fourth Era has produced on its own. Part 18. Harkon's Court and the Volkihar Vampire Bosses. Within Volkihar Keep, several named vampires serve under Harkon and his court, and each of them is a boss encounter at various points in the Dawnguard questline. They are worth examining individually because they illustrate something the DLC does well. The Volkihar are not simply minions. They are a civilization. Vingalmo and Orthyolf are the two vampire lords who serve as political rivals within the court. Both of them offer the Dragonborn alliance against the other, and both of them can be killed as part of the questline. Their rivalry is a microcosm of the Volkihar's internal politics. A court that has been isolated for centuries, with the same figures jockeying for position over and over, producing a kind of calcified political theater that has lost any connection to actual stakes. Goran Marathi is the court mage, and his design as a Dunmer vampire is worth noting. He is civil, professional, and loyal in a way that feels genuinely considered rather than simply programmed. He manages the practical administration of the court. He is one of the few members of the Volkihar who seems to understand that the court's culture is unsustainable over the long term, even if he does not act on that understanding. Farron Sadri is the court's alchemist and enchanter, a contrast to Garen in temperament but similar in competence. He manages the blood potions and enchanted equipment that maintain the court's military readiness. Fura Bloodmouth and Salonia Kaelia are warrior vampires in the more direct sense, fighters who handle the physical enforcement aspects of Harkon's authority. They are encountered in combat contexts throughout the DLC, rather than as court politicians. The court as a whole is a portrait of what immortality does to social structures. These vampires have been in the same hall, serving the same lord, for as long as any of them can clearly remember. They have developed elaborate personal resentments that have calcified into ritual. They have refined their survival skills past the point of necessity into art forms, and they have not changed in any meaningful way for centuries because, in the absence of mortality, there is nothing to push them toward change. When Harkon's plan fails and the court disperses, or is destroyed, depending on the choices the Dragonborn makes, there is a quality to the ending that feels less like victory and more like the dissolution of something that, for all its darkness, had a kind of coherence. The Volkihar were terrible. They were also real, in the way that only long-established institutions, however corrupt, can be real. Part 19, Mirak's Acolyte Dragon and the Final Form Battle in Apocrypha. The final boss sequence of the Dragonborn DLC is mechanically different from almost any other major encounter in Skyrim, and the difference is worth examining in some detail. When the Dragonborn rides Saratar to the summit of Apocrypha and confronts Mirak, the fight begins on a platform surrounded by the infinite Black Library. Mirak is in his full regalia, his tentacled mask, his robes that shift like something alive, his staff that pulses with Apocrypha's green light. He fights with shouts, with powerful magic, with a ward. What makes the fight distinctive is its multi-phase structure tied to the environment. When Mirak is sufficiently damaged, he retreats to the center of the platform and absorbs the soul of one of the three Alduin resurrected dragons that are also present in Apocrypha, Sarotar's companions. Flying around the edges of the arena, he heals. The fight resets. You have to damage him again. This can happen twice, 3 times if the fight extends. Each time, Mirak drains another dragon's soul, restoring himself at the cost of permanently diminishing the number of dragons on the platform. The implication is layered. Mirak is the first Dragonborn. He can absorb dragon souls. He is doing exactly what the Dragonborn does throughout the entire game. The final boss fight is, mechanically, you competing with a mirror image of yourself for the same resource, except that he uses the resource to survive, and you need to deny him that survival. The fight also demonstrates the central ambiguity of the Dragonborn power. Absorbing dragon souls is the player's primary means of progression. It is what makes the Dragonborn uniquely powerful. In Mirak's hands, the same ability becomes the tool of a tyrant's self-preservation. The gift and the curse are the same thing, shaped by the choice of how to use them. When Mirak is finally reduced to low health, he does not fall. He submerges himself in the waters of Apocrypha, attempting one final escape. And Hermaeus Mora's tentacles rise from those waters and impale him. Mora kills his own champion. He does it cleanly and without apparent regret. He explains to the Dragonborn that Mirak had become unreliable, that a champion who plots against his prince is a liability, and that the Dragonborn has demonstrated, through the act of defeating Mirak, that they are the superior champion. He offers them the role Mirak held, his servant, his new champion. The Dragonborn must serve Hermaeus Mora. The game does not force an answer. The Dragonborn defeats Mirak, absorbs his soul, the most powerful dragon soul absorption in the entire game, and then leaves Apocrypha. The question of whether they are now, in some cosmic sense, Mora's champion is left open. The Daedric Prince of Forbidden Knowledge has claimed them. Whether that claim holds is not something the game resolves. It is, in a sense, the most honest ending available. You did not defeat the Prince of Knowledge. You simply made his list. Part 20. The Living Draugr Bosses. Coralmil, Red Eagle, again, and named Tomb Warriors. Beyond the Dragon Priests and the named dragons, Skyrim's dungeons contain a category of boss that is easy to overlook because it does not announce itself with distinctive armor or unusual abilities. These are the named Draugr bosses, the ancient Nordic warriors who served various masters in the Merethic and First eras and who now guard their tombs in the same undead stupor as their less distinguished companions, but at a higher level of capability and with a specific history attached to them. Coralmil is one of these. He is found in Ironbind Barrow, and at certain levels he becomes one of the strongest Draugr encounters in the game. There is a connected quest that involves a scholar named Wylandria who sent 2 workers to the barrow and never heard from them again. The workers, it turns out, are dead. Coralmil killed them, and then he killed whoever came looking for them. He has been doing this indefinitely. The pattern of named Draugr bosses throughout Skyrim's dungeons reflects a broader lore truth. The Merethic and First Era were full of notable individuals. Warriors whose deeds were worthy of specific burial, chieftains who demanded their own tombs rather than common graves, necromancers whose research culminated in catastrophes, requiring their permanent interment. Every named Draugr in a named location represents an entire life that the game contains only in ruins. Mikrul Galderson is one of the 3 Galdr brothers, and his encounter is part of a quest line that runs through multiple dungeons. The 3 Galdr brothers, Mikrul, Sigdis, and Jurik, were the sons of a powerful Nordic mage named Archmage Galdur, who possessed an amulet of tremendous power. They murdered him for it and split the amulet among themselves. Their mother cursed them. They would not rest until the pieces of the amulet were restored to the original tomb and their crime was answered for. Mikrul is fought in Folgunthur, surrounded by Draugr servants he commands through some residual power of the stolen amulet. He is a Frost-type Draugr boss with a notable level of intelligence in his movements. He heals, he retreats, he manages range. His encounter is one of the cleaner examples of Skyrim's boss design, using the environment and the Draugr's behavior to create a fight that feels like more than simply standing in a room and trading damage. Sigdis Galderson is the most mechanically complex of the 3. He is fought in Geirmund's Hall, which is built on an island in a lake, and requires a long traversal through the flooded tunnels and combat platforming before reaching him. His fight involves doppelgangers, copies of himself that appear throughout the arena. Only the original takes meaningful damage. The copies are differentiated by their helmets, a detail that rewards attention. Jurik Galderson is found in Sarthal, the first Nordic city, which is now an excavation site managed by the College of Winterhold. He was sealed beneath the city along with the Eye of Magnus. His fight requires removing his invulnerability through the use of the Staff of Majlight at a specific point. He is the first in the Galdr quest line to be encountered if the player follows the College of Winterhold quests first. When all 3 brothers are defeated and the amulet is reassembled in Reachwater Rock, all 3 rise simultaneously for one final encounter. a combined boss fight against the ghosts of all three Galder sons together. This is the most mechanically demanding version of the fight, because it requires managing three different combat styles simultaneously in a space designed for the encounter. The Galder brothers' questline is connected to a book called Lost Legends, scattered across Skyrim with the same low frequency as the Legend of Red Eagle. If you find it and read it, the quest begins. If you never do, the encounters still happen, but without the framing that gives them full context. The game rewards players who read the books. Part 21. Orshendor, Forsworn Chiefs, and the Reach's Hidden Leaders. The Reach is the most politically complex hold in Skyrim. Its forsworn population, descended from the original Reachmen who lived in Markarth before the Nords retook it, fight a guerrilla campaign that is simultaneously terrorism and resistance, depending entirely on whose historical claims you prioritize. Their leadership structure includes bosses that are rarely discussed in the same breath as dragon priests or Daedric quest targets, but who carry their own weight of lore. Forsworn Briarheart warriors are the named combat leaders of the Forsworn, created through a ritual involving a hagraven removing their heart and replacing it with a Briarheart, a thorny seed that maintains their life through magical means. The original heart is discarded. The Briarheart lives as a result of dark nature magic rather than biological function. They are, in their way, as transformed from their original state as any Draugr, but they made the choice. The transformation is willing. Senior Forsworn chiefs, encountered in the major Forsworn camps and in the Forsworn-controlled ruins like Lost Valley Redoubt and Deepwood Redoubt, are well-equipped, high-level fighters with levels that scale above most generic enemies. They are not named individually in most cases, but their presence at the head of Forsworn military structures implies the kind of organizational history that the game's broader treatment of the Forsworn as a resistance movement supports. The most specific Forsworn boss encounter comes through the Companion's questline. Warlord Gathric is not part of any major questline and appears in a barrow in northeastern Skyrim. He is not Forsworn. He is a Draugr warlord of a specific type, the kind that the game generates at high levels to populate dungeons, a named version of a type that would otherwise be anonymous. The distinction matters because Gathric appears on the Atlas of Dragons, suggesting that whoever compiled that atlas considered him worth noting, alongside named dragons, which implies a level of historical importance that the game does not otherwise explain. Part 22. Bosses of the Daedric Questlines. The Daedric Questlines produce some of Skyrim's most interesting boss encounters because they are framed not as obstacles to overcome, but as tests set by entities for whom the struggle itself is the point. Dawnbreaker, the artifact granted by Meridia for clearing her beacon temple of undead, has no dedicated boss in the traditional sense. The final encounter in the quest is Malkorin, a powerful necromancer who has desecrated Meridia's temple by filling it with shades. He is the human antagonist of the questline, but he is also, in a sense, Meridia's test. She chose the Dragonborn to remove this problem because she knew they could. His fight is difficult because he is accompanied by shade duplicates and because the temple's layout creates pinch points where multiple enemies can attack simultaneously. Molag Bal's questline ends with the rescue of a priest of Boethia from the power of Molag Bal himself. The boss is Logrolf the Willful, but the encounter is unique in that you do not fight Logrolf to kill him. You fight him to break his will. Molag Bal is the prince of domination and enslavement, and the quest requires the player to beat a bound captive with a mace until he submits. It is deliberately uncomfortable. It is designed to make the player feel what domination looks like from the inside of it. Those who complete the quest claim Molag Bal's artifact. Those who cannot bring themselves to participate leave empty-handed. Sanguine's quest, one of the most genuinely funny quests in the game, involves getting the Dragonborn Blackout drunk at a tavern and waking up in a temple with a goat and a missing staff. The boss at the end is Sanguine himself in disguise as a simple tavern patron named Sam Gaven. He is not particularly powerful. The joke is the point. Sam is unassuming, friendly, and in retrospect, obviously a Daedric prince in a hat. Clavicus Vile's questline involves tracking down a vampire named Barbas, who is actually the Daedric prince's dog in disguise. The final decision the questline presents is whether to give Barbas back to Vile, receiving the mask of Clavicus Vile in exchange, or to keep the Rueful Axe as an alternative reward. The reason the rueful axe does not count toward the artifact achievement is that Vile is testing whether the Dragonborn understands the real value of a Daedric reward. The mask represents Vile's true gift. The axe is the booby prize for players who took the obvious option rather than the correct one. Hircine's questline, found at Bloated Man's Grotto, forces the Dragonborn to either hunt a werewolf named Sinding, who is fleeing a curse, or to join Sinding in killing the hunters who are pursuing him. Neither choice is clean. Hircine rewards the Dragonborn either way, because to him, the hunt is the point regardless of who is being hunted. The boss encounter in either version of the questline involves either killing Sinding or killing the hunters, and the fight at Bloated Man's Grotto is one of the more intimate and atmospherically charged boss arenas in the base game. Part 23. The Ancient Falmer and Knight Paladin, Gelebor. The Knight Paladin Gelebor is one of the most unusual figures in Skyrim's DLC. He is a snow elf, not a Falmer. A snow elf who retained his sanity, his intelligence, his culture, and his physical form for thousands of years by virtue of the simple fact that he never ate the toxic fungi that the Dwemer fed to the snow elves to blind and enslave them. He was stationed at a way shrine in the Forgotten Vale as a guardian of Oriel's temple when the Dwemer enslaved his people, and he has been there ever since. His brother, Prelate Sidanies, went into the chantry of Oriel on some errand that Gelebor hoped would end with his return. That was thousands of years ago. Gelebor has been waiting at his way shrine, maintaining the rights of Oriel's temple, hoping his brother would come back, since before the First Era. He is not a boss encounter. He is an ally. But he stands in an area populated by the Falmer descendants of his people, the twisted creatures that Dwemer poison, and centuries of darkness made of the beautiful, accomplished snow elves. And the contrast between who he is and what they became is one of the most visually devastating illustrations in the game. When the Dragonborn eventually enters the inner sanctum and finds Prelate Sidanies, what they find is that Gelebor's brother became Harkon's guardian, enthralled by the vampire's influence, maintaining his position not through loyalty but through magical compulsion. The reunion the Knight Paladin has been waiting for ends not in warmth but in the Dragonborn killing what his brother became. Gelebor does not collapse when told, he simply acknowledges it. Thousands of years of waiting for something that ended long ago does not produce the dramatic grief of someone who had hope until a moment ago. It produces a quiet that is harder to look at than crying. He gives the Dragonborn the sun-hallowed arrows they need to use Oriel's bow against Harkon. He gives them because he has had thousands of years to decide what his purpose is, and this is it, ensuring that the bow is used correctly, whatever that takes. Part 24. The Ghost of Soon and the Guardians of Sovngarde. Sovngarde is Skyrim's Nordic afterlife. You reach it through the portal at Skuldafn, after defeating Nokron and retrieving the Elder Scroll that opened the way forward. And the first figure you meet there, the one standing at the bridge to the Hall of Valor, is Tsun. Tsun was the shield thane of Shor, the dead god of the Nords. He is the guardian of the bridge and the tester of those who seek entrance to the hall. In life, in the mythic time before the current age, he was killed defending Shor from an enemy force. He now guards the bridge for eternity, testing the worthy. His test is combat. He fights the Dragonborn at the bridge, and the fight is framed not as a battle to the death, but as a demonstration. He needs to see who you are, what you are capable of, whether you are worthy to cross. When you prove yourself, he steps aside. He does not hold grudges. He is deeply professional about something that could be personal. The lore detail that makes Tsun interesting is the divine status question. Shor, the Nordic interpretation of the god Lorcan, the dead god whose sacrifice created Mundus, is one of the most complicated figures in Elder Scrolls cosmology. He is dead in the sense that creating the mortal world cost him his divine aspect. But Sovngarde is real. The Hall of Valor is real. The dead Nords in it are real, and they are waiting, and Tsun is at the bridge. Tsun is teaching the Dragonborn the whirlwind sprint shout when he grants passage, specifically the third word of the shout, which is the strongest version. The gift is practical and immediate. The bridge is long, and the enemies of Sovngarde are in the fog before it, and speed is useful. It is also symbolic. Tsizun gives you the means to run toward Alduin rather than away. Beyond the bridge, in the fog of Sovngarde, where Alduin has been trapping souls, the three ancient heroes from the Dragon War wait. Gurmlith Golden Hilt, Hakon One Eye, and Feldir the Old. They are the ones who used the Elder Scroll originally. They have been partially consumed by Alduin over the course of his time in Sovngarde, but not fully. When the Dragonborn arrives and breaks the fog with the clear skies shout, they are freed enough to fight. The final battle with Alduin is a 4-on-1 fight. The three ancient heroes attack him, while the Dragonborn provides the decisive force. It is the reunion that should have happened when Alduin first returned. The people who originally defeated him, now reinforced by the one being in existence with the specific power to defeat him permanently. It is also the only boss fight in Skyrim where you have named companions who have their own history with the enemy you are fighting. Gurmlaz, Hakon, Feldir, they are not strangers to this. They have fought Alduin before. They know exactly what he is. And they fought him then, not because they were the strongest or the most powerful, but because they were the ones who showed up. Part 25. Final facts, final thoughts. 120 layers of a world. We have walked through a great deal of Skyrim tonight. We have stood at the foot of the throat of the world with Paarthurnax, who has been sitting up there longer than most civilizations last. We have sat in the soul cairn and understood finally what all those soul gems actually mean. We have watched Miraak wait thousands of years in an infinite library for a freedom that was never really going to come. Here are the last gathered facts, the details that did not fit neatly into any of the longer sections, but that deserve to be said before the fire goes out tonight. Fact: when you fight Alduin in Sovngarde, his health regenerates, unless the three ancient heroes are keeping him occupied. The regeneration is not a mechanical difficulty spike. It is a lore-accurate representation of what he is doing in Sovngarde, feeding. The souls of the dead Nords provide him power. Removing his access to those souls through the ancient hero's attacks is not just tactical, it is cutting off his supply. Fact: the dragon priests who are not among the named 8, the generic ones that can appear at certain levels in various Draugr locations, are not simply visual reskins of existing Draugr. They represent the lower-ranking members of the dragon cult's hierarchy, priests who serve specific dragons that are no longer named in any surviving text, whose individual histories have been lost, but whose commitment to service has maintained them in the same way it maintained the named 8. Fact: Morokei, found in Labyrinthian with the Staff of Magnus, was not simply waiting. He was maintained by the magical barrier that Savos Arin's enthralled companions were sustaining around him. When the Dragonborn breaks that barrier, Morokei does not simply wake up. He is released from a centuries-long stasis that was itself powered by the consciousness of two people who had no choice in the matter. The moment of Morokei's freedom is simultaneously the moment those two people's perpetual suffering ends. Fact: the wooden mask found in Labyrinthian, the one that transports the wearer back to Bramjunar's peak, has a unique property. It provides no enchantment, only the temporal displacement. It is the key to the dragon cult's highest achievement, its most prized artifact, and it provides nothing to its wearer except the ability to reach what was locked away. The scholar who found it and died for it carried it all the way to Labyrinthian, solved the puzzle, and was killed by the people he trusted before he could use the knowledge he had gained. Fact: Alduin's wall in Skyhaven Temple, the Akaviri monument to prophecy, was sealed specifically so that only a Dragonborn could open it. The blood seal at the entrance required Dragonborn blood. The Akaviri who built it understood, as the Blades have always understood, that some knowledge should only be accessible to those with a specific stake in it. The wall waited in its sealed temple for over 1,000 years for the right person to come and read it. Everything depicted on it came true. Fact: Dornavir cannot be summoned indoors. He requires open sky. This is not simply a technical limitation of his size. For a dragon who has been underground in the soul cairn for so long that he has forgotten what real sky looks like, the requirement to have sky above him when he is called is the most honest representation of what his freedom actually means. He needs the sky to be real. He summons into it every time, and every time the sky is there. Fact: the Ebony Warrior, upon death, does not go directly to Sovngarde in any observable way. He is not added to the list of named warriors visible in the Hall of Valor, but the lore around Sovngarde is explicit. Shore decides who enters, and belief is power. The Ebony Warrior has lived every detail of the Nordic warrior tradition with complete conviction. If the Hall of Valor is real, and in Skyrim it clearly is, the argument for his presence in it is better than the argument against. Fact: Karstag's ghost, summoned 3 times, cannot be directed or controlled. When called, he attacks the nearest enemy. He does not distinguish between your allies and your enemies if they happen to be the nearest target. He is a king summoned to a battle, not a pet commanded by a stranger. He fights on his own terms. The 3 summons are not 3 wishes. They are 3 occasions on which he has agreed to be present, and what happens in that presence is his to decide. Fact: Volthuriol, when he first appears in Blackreach, is passive. He does not attack immediately. He simply arrives, drawn by the resonance of the unrelenting force shout on the yellow orb. There is a window, brief, where he is present and not hostile. Players who notice this have reported standing still for a moment, watching an ancient dragon float in the light of an artificial sun inside a mountain, and feeling something they could not quite name. Awe, perhaps. The sense of having found something that was not meant to be found. Fact: the Soul Cairn's architecture predates Harkon and the Volkihar. The ideal masters built it or shaped it from something that already existed, in an era before the current 4th era vampire clans had any significant power. Velarika, Harkon's wife, chose it as her hiding place because she understood that even Harkon could not follow her into a plane of oblivion the ideal masters controlled. She was right. She was also wrong about her ability to leave, but that is a different lesson. Fact: Parthenax's name, Ambition Overlord Cruelty, is not a name he was given. It is a name he chose, or at least it is a name that those who named him gave him to describe what he was. Every dragon's name in the dragon language is descriptive rather than arbitrary. The language actualizes reality through speech. A dragon named Ambition Overlord Cruelty was named for what it was. That it chose to become something different from its name is the whole story. Fact: Miraak absorbs the souls of dragons during the Dragonborn DLC. Even for dragons the Dragonborn has already slain. If a dragon appears in the world and the Dragonborn kills it, Miraak can reach from Apocrypha and take the soul before the Dragonborn can absorb it. This is lore accurate. There is nothing in the Elder Scrolls cosmology that restricts the Dragonborn power to one user at a time. 2 Dragonborn exist simultaneously in the 4th era. The power belongs to whichever one reaches the soul first. Fact: after Alduin is defeated in Sovngarde, the 3 ancient heroes are able to move on. They were trapped in the Hall of Valor, not by Sovngarde's design, but by Alduin's feeding. With him gone, the fog lifts. The souls he had been partially consuming are released. Gurmlae, Hakon, and Feldir can finally rest. They have been waiting since the Merethic era for someone to come and finish what they could not. The Dragonborn did not complete their mission. The Dragonborn completed the mission they started. Fact: Na Kreen, guardian of Alduin's portal to Sovngarde, speaks in dragon language during his boss fight. He is the only dragon priest who uses exclusively dragon language, rather than mixing it with spoken common tongue. He says, when engaging, something that translates roughly to, "I was commanded by my overlord to guard this portal." He is not angry. He is not malicious. He is fulfilling a directive that he received thousands of years ago from a master who has since been defeated in combat. He is, in his way, the most tragic of the 8. He is not waiting for rescue or reward. He is simply completing a task. Fact: the Reaper in the Soul Cairn is wearing an executioner's outfit. In Skyrim's visual language, executioners are specifically the people who carry out judicial killing. They work at headsman's blocks in cities under the authority of the holds. The Reaper is wearing this in a place that is not a city and not under the authority of any hold. The implication is that the Soul Cairn has its own justice system, its own crimes, its own punishments. We see only the enforcer. We never see the judge. Fact: Dukan's name, which can be translated as both dishonor and devour kine, is the only dragon priest name in the game that carries an implicit theological rebellion embedded in the translation. To name oneself or to be named devour kine, to consume the goddess through whose divine intervention mortals first gain the Thu'um, is a statement of opposition to the very source of the power Miraak and his acolytes were using. It is possible that Dukan's name reflected a specific act or belief rather than a general disposition. A dragon priest who was specifically in opposition to the divine source of mortal Thu'um, while wielding mortal Thu'um in rebellion against dragons, is a paradox the lore does not resolve. Fact: the Ebony Warrior has a perk called Reflect Blows. This perk means that if you hit him with a power attack using a melee weapon, there is a chance the damage comes back to you. He has been accumulating combat knowledge for his entire life. His perk is not just a mechanical challenge, it is the summary of a warrior who has learned how to make other people hurt themselves against him. The most effective way to fight a master of defensive combat is at a distance. Archery works. Magic works. Getting close and hitting as hard as you can is the amateur approach, and the Ebony Warrior has prepared specifically for amateurs. There is something particular about the bosses of Skyrim that sets them apart from enemies in most other games. They were not designed simply as obstacles. They were designed as stories. Some of those stories are written in books scattered across the world. Some are told in the architecture of the ruins they guard. Some are in the dialogue lines they speak when they see you, in the specific shouts they use, in the way their masks are shaped. Some are in the names they carry, because in a world where language actualizes reality, a name is not decorative, it is definitional. Every boss you have ever walked past, killed in 30 seconds, or barely survived after several attempts, was once something else, was once part of a civilization that believed in things, was once given a role by a dragon or a Daedric prince or a cult or a family that thought the role mattered, was once in some sense that is hard to articulate but easy to feel when you are standing in the wreckage of their tomb, alive. The archaeology of Skyrim is not just in the artifacts, it is in the things that guard the artifacts. It is in Nokron at the portal to Sovngarde, still at his post. It is in Karstag rising when you return his skull to his throne, because even a ghost has a dignity that cannot be sat on forever. It is in the Ebony Warrior waiting at his last vigil in the mountains, dressed in the best armor in the world, asking for one more worthy thing before he is done. Skyrim has been played for over a decade now. It has been re-released more times than anyone thought a single game could be. And the reason it keeps returning, the reason you are listening to this right now instead of something else, is not the combat system, or the crafting, or even the open world in the most generic sense. It is the feeling, which never fully goes away no matter how many times you play it, that there is more. That around the next corner of the next dungeon, down at the bottom of the next Dwemer ruin, in the last chamber of the last barrow you thought you had already cleared, there is something waiting. Something with a name, something with a history, something that was here long before you arrived and will, in its way, still be here after you leave. The fire at the top of the throat of the world is very small and very far up. Paarthurnax is there, meditating in the cold, fighting the same fight he has been fighting for thousands of years. The soul cairn is gray and still and full of people who do not know where they are anymore. The twin dragons beneath the ice of the Forgotten Vale have been resting for millennia, guarding a word wall in a valley no one visits, and Sovngarde is real. The Hall of Valor is lit from within. The three ancient heroes who waited the longest finally got to rest. Sleep well tonight. You know where to find it all if you need to go back. If this journey through Skyrim's deepest lore helped you drift, a subscription takes 2 seconds and guarantees you will not miss the next one. Every story we tell here, we tell slowly and completely, the way these worlds deserve. If you have thoughts about which boss we should go deeper on, or which questline you want to fall asleep to next, leave it in the comments. Until next time, rest easy. Appendix: the 90 remaining facts, gathered and slow. We are not done yet. There are still facts in Skyrim's boss encounters that have not been touched tonight. Details buried in animation states and dialogue conditions and lore texts that most players never read. The fire is still going. Let's keep going. Odaviing, the dragon you capture in Whiterun's Dragon's Reach during the main quest, has a name that means Snow Hunt Wing. He is one of Alduin's generals from the Merethic era, resurrected with the others and deployed across Skyrim in the 4th era. When you trap him in the Dragon's Reach, keep using the Dragon Wren shout. Something interesting happens in the conversation that follows. Odaviing does not immediately agree to help you. He negotiates. He is not broken or frightened. He simply recognizes that the situation has changed and adjusts his allegiance accordingly. He acknowledges that Alduin's approach was arrogance, that Alduin assumed his restored power would be sufficient and underestimated the Dragonborn, and he respects the Dragonborn specifically for having proven that estimation wrong. He is not your ally because he believes in your cause. He is your ally because you demonstrated power he respects, and because Alduin, by fleeing to Sovngarde, abandoned his army. Odaviing's primary loyalty is to strength. The strongest force in the room becomes the one he serves. He is honest about this. There is something almost refreshing about a dragon who is completely transparent about how he decides where his loyalty goes. After the main quest, Odavian can be called with a shout. He arrives and fights for you. He is, by this point, not serving out of compulsion, but out of whatever counts as voluntary commitment for a dragon who measures relationships in power dynamics. He chose to stay. That is a meaningful thing for a being whose language contains no word for linear time's permanence. The High Hrothgar courtyard is where the ancient Nordic heroes fought Alduin in the past, and the time wound, the temporal scar left by the Elder Scroll's use, persists there. When the Dragonborn uses the Elder Scroll at the summit of the Throat of the World, they witness the original battle, Gurmla, Hakon, and Feldir against Alduin, playing out in a ghostly reenactment that the player can watch but not participate in. The Dragonren shout was invented here, created by the three heroes to give Alduin the experience of mortality, and the first time it was ever shouted, it was shouted at this mountain in this place. The echoes of that moment are visible to whoever holds an Elder Scroll and looks. The Elder Scrolls themselves are worth a paragraph in any discussion of bosses and encounters, because they are present in several boss arenas as the objects being fought over. In Alftond and the depths of Blackreach and the Tower of Mizark, you are moving toward the Elder Scroll that will take you to the Throat of the World to witness Alduin's banishment. In the College of Winterhold questline, you are recovering artifacts related to Magnus, the architect of creation. In the Dawnguard questline, 3 Elder Scrolls are the key to Harkon's plan. These ancient, partially cognizable texts that blind the unprotected reader and produce visions in those trained to use them are woven through most of the game's major boss encounters as the stakes or the tools, and their nature is such that they contain all of time simultaneously, which means they always have and always will contain the specific events they describe. Alduin's story is already in the Elder Scroll that was used to send him forward through time. The banishment happened, and the return happened, and the defeat in Sovngarde happened, all simultaneously from the perspective of the scrolls. The ancient Nords who used the Elder Scroll to banish Alduin were not working with a tool they fully understood. They were trusting in something that already knew how it would end. The Greybeards, seated in their monastery below the Throat of the World, have their own hierarchy. Arngeir speaks for the group and is the one who interacts with the Dragonborn throughout the questline. Bori, Einarth, and Wulfgar are the other 3. Einarth teaches the Dragonborn the first word of Whirlwind Sprint by tracing a rune in the dirt. The rune glows, and the knowledge simply exists in the Dragonborn's mind. This is not a standard learning process. This is the way the Thu'um is transmitted at the level of the Greybeards, not through explanation or instruction, but through the direct transfer of understanding. The fact that the Greybeards can teach this way, that they have internalized the words so completely that they can externalize them for another person simply by marking a symbol, is the most concrete demonstration available of what their decades of meditation have produced. They do not explain the word for whirlwind. They become the word and let someone else touch it. The Forsworn Hagraven bosses encountered across Skyrim, particularly in the major Forsworn-controlled locations, are former women who chose transformation. The Hagraven ritual involves giving up your humanity, your mortality, your physical softness for magical power and extended life. The result is something with bird characteristics: feathers, talons, the ability to summon flame Atronachs. They are the spiritual leaders of the Forsworn and the practitioners of the bone charm magic that creates Briarheart warriors. What the lore does not emphasize enough is the community context of this transformation. A woman who becomes a Hagraven does not leave the Forsworn. She becomes the religious and magical authority of her community. She conducts the rituals that create the warriors who protect the Reach's resistance. She is not an aberration. She is an elder, in the oldest sense of the word. The fact that she is also monstrous is part of the Reach's cosmology, where power and suffering and transformation are inseparable. Morokei, discussed earlier in the Dragon Priest section, is worth returning to for one specific detail about his encounter. He is initially held in stasis by the 2 enthralled mages that Savos Aren bound in place to contain him. When the Dragonborn kills the 2 mages to break the barrier, a brief moment happens that most players miss because they are managing the combat. The 2 mages collapse not with the sounds of death, but with something that sounds more like relief. Their magical enthrallment ends. Whatever was happening to them in the stasis is over. And then Morike is free and the fight begins. The two mages are named Atma and Takis in Light. These are not placeholder names. They are named characters with histories that the game does not fully tell you. They were the survivors of Savos Arain's ill-fated expedition into Labyrinthian. They were the last two left when Savos made his decision. They have been standing in that chamber, frozen, maintaining the barrier, for years or decades, while Savos Arain built a career as the Archmage at the College of Winterhold and never returned to rescue them. The College of Winterhold questline confronts Savos Arain with his past at multiple points. He knows the Dragonborn is going into Labyrinthian. He knows what is there. He cannot bring himself to say what he did. And when the Dragonborn returns with Morikai's mask, and without the two mages, having released them by killing them, the understanding passes between Savos and the Dragonborn without being spoken. He gave up two people to contain one threat, and then spent decades building himself up, while those two people held the seal he created. He is not a villain in the traditional sense. He made a terrible decision under impossible circumstances, and then built an entire career around never having to look at it again. When the Eye of Magnus threatens the college and eventually kills him, there is a reading of the events where the universe is simply settling a debt that had accumulated interest for years. The dragon Nahagliv, among the resurrected members of Alduin's army, is buried west of Rorikstead in a mound that is accessible from early in the game and is near several active farms. Rorikstead itself is one of the most prosperous farming communities in Skyrim, notable for its unusually fertile crops and terrain that should not support them easily. There is a fan theory, not officially confirmed but built on specific in-game details, that Rorikstead's prosperity is connected to a Daedric bargain made by one of the town's founders. Whether that is true or not, the proximity of a sleeping ancient dragon to one of Skyrim's most productive farming communities creates a specific image: life and grain and livestock, directly above ancient death, separated by a few feet of earth and several thousand years of geological patience. Nahagliv did not choose his burial site. He ended the Dragon War somewhere in Whiterun Hold, and that is where the cult buried him. The farm above him was built by people who had no idea what was underneath. The Draugr who guard Skyrim's burial mounds fall into several categories of motivation that the lore distinguishes clearly. Most Draugr are simply animated remains, corpses preserved by cold and lingering magical resonance, functioning on a kind of recorded purpose without active consciousness. But the higher-ranking Draugr, the Draugr Death Overlords and Draugr Death Lords that appear at high levels, carry more than residual animation. They carry purpose. They were buried with a directive and they have maintained it. The directive, in most cases, was to protect, to guard, to maintain the tomb against intrusion until the dragon's return or the dragon cult reclaims the location or something specific happens that resolves the need for guardianship. None of these conditions ever occurred, except in the broadest sense with Alduin's return, which most tomb-dwelling Draugr had no way of knowing about. So, they kept waiting for the entire First Era, for the entire Second Era, for the Third, for the Fourth. They are not tragedies in the emotional sense. The way Gelibor waiting for his brother is a tragedy. They are simply persistent, committed beyond any reasonable expectation of relevance to a directive that stopped making practical sense when the dragon cult collapsed. And when the Dragonborn enters their tomb, the Draugr do not evaluate the situation and choose to fight. They respond to the stimulus of intrusion exactly as they were programmed to do, and they will continue to do so until the last one is destroyed. This is, incidentally, why the Nordic burial system is still functioning. The tombs have not been looted into emptiness. The valuables inside are still there, centuries later, because whatever lives in the tombs has been consistently and efficiently killing anyone who entered. The Draugr have done their job perfectly. The problem is that the civilization that assigned the job is gone, and the assignment is now just running indefinitely with no one to call it complete. The Vampire Lord form, obtainable through the Dawnguard DLC by accepting either Harkon's or Serana's blood, is worth examining as a transformation boss mechanic rather than simply a power the Dragonborn acquires. In the DLC's narrative, Vampire Lords are pureblood vampires, descendants of Molag Bal's original bloodline, and the form represents a full expression of what that lineage is capable of. Wings, levitation, life drain cast from a distance, the ability to summon gargoyles and raise corpses, a combat style that is aerial and predatory in a way that ground-based combat cannot match. When you fight Harkon in that form, you are fighting someone who has had centuries to develop and refine the exact same transformation you may have acquired in the last few hours of gameplay. The power curve disparity is real. Harkon in Vampire Lord form is better at being a Vampire Lord than you are, because he has been one for much longer. The fight is a masterclass in how to design a confrontation with someone who has the same powers as the player but has had much more time with them. The Dawn Guard themselves, the Vampire Hunter Order that is the alternative faction in the DLC, have their own hierarchy of boss-type figures that appear in their questline. Harkon's agents, the various vampires and thralls sent to oppose the Dragonborn during the DLC, escalate in power as the story progresses in a way that reflects Harkon's increasing desperation. As his plan is disrupted and his timeline compressed, he deploys more powerful resources. The Castle Volkihar courtyard, accessible late in the DLC's questline if you side with the Dawn Guard, contains several powerful vampire bosses concentrated in one space. The assault on the castle, moving through the courtyard and the Great Hall toward Harkon himself, is one of the most sustained boss gauntlet sequences in the game, requiring the management of multiple powerful enemies in a confined space, with no respawn or rest between encounters. Lord Harkon's Sanctum, where the final confrontation happens, is designed specifically for his powers. He has the high ground. The architecture forces the Dragonborn to approach him through a space he controls. The gargoyle statues lining the walls will animate and join the fight if given the opportunity. It is not a neutral arena, it is his arena, and he knows exactly how to use it. When he dies, the castle does not simply empty. Several members of the court survive. Serana is still present. The vampires who were not directly aligned with Harkon's plan, who served the Volkihar out of longevity and habit rather than devotion to his specific agenda, simply continue existing. The destruction of Harkon does not end the Volkihar, it decapitates a specific project. The castle, the court, the bloodline, these persist. Serana's arc throughout the Dawn Guard DLC is the most complete character journey in all of Skyrim's DLC content, and it ends at a boss encounter. She was sealed in Dim Hollow Crypt by her own mother Valerica to protect her from Harkon. She has been in there for potentially hundreds of years. She carries one of the 3 Elder Scrolls needed for Harkon's plan, which is why both the Dawn Guard and the Volkihar want to find her. Her awakening at the start of the questline is the inciting incident that sets everything in motion. Her relationship with Harkon is the DLC's emotional core. He loved her in the specific and twisted way that a creature of domination can love, by owning rather than cherishing, by projecting onto rather than accepting, by seeing in her a reflection of his ambitions rather than a person with her own perspective. His plan to block the sun was, in his framing, partly a gift for her. An end to the limitation that made her vulnerable, she wanted none of it. When Serana stands in the great hall of her father's castle and watches the Dragonborn fight him, she is watching the resolution of a conflict that has defined her entire vampire existence. The first thing she would have seen when she opened her eyes in Dim Hollow was the Dragonborn's face. The last thing she wants is for her father to kill them. The outcome of the fight, Harkon's death, is something she can only witness. She cannot bring herself to strike the blow. She is not a boss. She is the person you fight the boss for, which in some ways is harder to write well than any combat encounter. One last thing about the Soul Cairn, before we leave it for the night. The souls trapped there include not just those captured in soul gems, but something broader. Souls that were involved in transactions with the Ideal Masters in some capacity. The Ideal Masters are described as having existed since before recorded history, making deals and collecting payments. The Soul Cairn is the storage and feeding ground for everything they have accumulated. The ghosts wandering through it, the ones who speak confused fragments about their lives and their confusion about where they are, were not all imprisoned through soul trapping. Some of them made deals they did not fully understand. Some of them sought power from the Ideal Masters, the same way mortals seek power from Daedric princes, and the price of the power turned out to be permanent residence. They got what they asked for. They are still here with it. The Reaper's role in this context is clearer when framed this way. He is not just an enforcer against intrusions from outside the Soul Cairn. He is the consequence visited on those inside it who try to transgress against the Ideal Master's rules. The Soul Cairn is not simply a prison, it is an economy. The Ideal Masters collect. The Reaper ensures the collection stays collected. The souls that mention him in fragments of overheard conversation do so with the specific tone of people who have heard about a consequence they do not fully want to test. The final and perhaps strangest boss-adjacent encounter in all of Skyrim is Hermaeus Mora himself, though he is never directly fought. He is the architect of the Dragonborn DLC's central conflict, the entity who has been playing the longest game, and he ends the questline by killing his own champion and claiming a new one. He is present as a voice, as an eye, as a tentacled appearance in the black waters of Apocrypha. He cannot be attacked. He offers no fight. He simply speaks. And in a game full of things that can be killed, a thing that cannot be killed and makes no apology for it, that simply states its terms and waits to see how you respond, is its own kind of final boss. His terms, offered at the end of the questline, are not refusable in any mechanical sense. You have defeated Miraak. Mora killed him. You are in Mora's realm. You are the new champion whether you want the title or not. The Dragonborn walks out of Apocrypha, carrying Miraak's soul and the title of the Demon of Knowledge's preferred mortal. What they do with that designation is between them and whatever remains of their conscience. Miraak served for thousands of years and never got free. The Dragonborn just started. If you made it all the way to the end of this, then wherever you are in the world and whatever hour of the night or early morning is outside your window, you have spent a meaningful amount of time with some of the most thoughtfully constructed characters in modern gaming. They are not just boss fights, they are arguments. Arguments about what power is for, about whether the worst things done in the past can be balanced by long enough service to something better, about what a person becomes when the civilization that gave their life meaning is gone. Paarthurnax on his mountain says, "What is better, to be born good or to overcome an evil nature through great effort?" He is asking about himself. He knows his nature. He chooses his effort anyway. There is something deeply human about that. There is something worth falling asleep to, in the knowledge that the oldest creature in Skyrim, born with cruelty in his name, decided thousands of years ago that cruelty was not enough, that there was something better to be. The fire at the top of the world is still burning. Sleep well. If this helped you drift tonight, subscribe so you never miss the next story. Leave a comment with your time and place, and come back whenever the world is too loud and you need somewhere quieter to rest. Final coda. The sounds of their names. We have talked tonight about what bosses do, about what they guard, about how they became what they are. But there is one last dimension to Skyrim's boss encounters that is almost entirely overlooked in most discussions, and that is the acoustic dimension, the sound of their names, the way the game communicates power through language before a single weapon is drawn. The dragon language is, in lore terms, literally the code of reality. A word spoken in it does not describe a concept, it actualizes it. When a dragon says the word for fire, fire happens. Not because the word is a trigger for a separate process. The word is the fire, expressed through sound. This means every dragon language name in Skyrim is, at the most foundational level of the game's cosmology, a description that is also a creation. Alduin is not called the World Eater because humans named him that. He is that because that is what his name says he is, and his name is in a language that makes things true by speaking them. Paarthurnax, ambition, overlord, cruelty, 3 words that created a being with those qualities baked into its nature before it ever had a choice about them. The dragon sat down on a mountain and chose to be something different from the words his existence was made of. The philosophical weight of that is difficult to fully articulate. Imagine if your name, in the language of creation, described the worst version of what you could be. Imagine spending thousands of years proving your name wrong, not through a single dramatic act, through ordinary, continuous, daily refusal to be what the universe built you to be. Miraak, allegiance and guide. He guided others to power. He was allegiant until the moment he stopped being allegiant, which turned out to be the one allegiance that defined his entire existence. Mora called him first servant, the servant who plotted against his lord for millennia without ever quite breaking free. The guide who led 3 dragon priests into rebellion and then left them sealed in barrows on an island while he waited in an infinite library. His name's tension between service and leadership, allegiance and guidance, maps exactly onto his story. Durnavier, curse never dying. He made a deal to be stronger than death, and the deal made him something that death could never resolve. trapped in the soul cairn not because he could not die, but because the terms of his continued existence required staying there. Never dying, as it turned out, meant never leaving. His name contains the whole story in 3 words. Volthuriol, the dragon in Blackreach, has a name that translates to something approximating darkened fire mastery. He is a dragon of fire, found in a place of artificial light, underground, where darkness and fire interact in a way that reflects the specific acoustic resonance of his name. Nahagliv, fury burn dominate. He breathes fire. He was one of Alduin's generals. His motivations in the brief encounter you have with him are exactly that. Fury expressed as burning, expressed as an attempt to dominate the person who has come to absorb his soul. Vayan Taruth, victory battle dominate. Name for what he pursued in life, victory through combat, through dominance. He is the most active of the resurrected named dragons, the one who will leave his mound and search for the dragonborn if the conditions are met. His name implies pursuit. He searches because his nature seeks victory. Saluk Nir, phantom scale dominate. The first dragon Alduin resurrects in your presence. He speaks to you before the fight, his first words in 4,000 years, and they are a claim of dominance. He has been ash and bone in memory for thousands of years, and the first thing he does is assert his power. The phantom endures, the scales return, the dominance remains the goal. The Greybeard's names, Arngeir, Bori, Einarth, Wulfgar, are all Old Norse in origin, fitting for men who have devoted their lives to a philosophy built on Norse mythological foundations. Arngeir combines words for eagle and spear. Wulfgar means wolf spear. These are not coincidental. They are names given to people who became warriors before they became monks, names that carry a history of violence now expressed as restraint. Tsun, the guardian at Sovngarde's bridge, has a name that in the real-world Old Norse tradition is associated with fighting and combat. He is the eternal fighter who died defending a god and was given the bridge to guard as both honor and purpose. His name describes him perfectly. He is the combat he represents, condensed into a form that stands at the threshold between the world of the living and whatever comes next. Harkon, the vampire lord, has a name that echoes Old Norse Har, meaning gray or old, and Kon, meaning royal or king, the Grey King, the Old King. He has been old for a very long time. He has been a king for most of it. His name is accurate in both directions. Serana's name does not appear to have a direct dragon language or Old Norse etymology that maps cleanly. It sounds Cyrodiilic, or perhaps Daedric in origin, fitting for a child born to vampire nobility whose cultural context is not purely Nordic. She is not fully of Skyrim's tradition. She is something older than the Fourth Era's cultural frameworks can easily categorize. The Ebony Warrior has no given name in the game. He is simply the Ebony Warrior, and that namelessness is part of his design. He is a title, a function, a moment. He is the thing that happens when a life of extraordinary capability reaches its limit and asks one more question of the world before it is done. He does not need a name. He has what his life made him. Red Eagle has a name only in translation from the Reach's native language. He was Feolin in his people's tongue, a word meaning free bird, or perhaps free will depending on how the scholarly sources parse it. A free bird who made himself a cage by accepting the Hagraven's gift. A man who gave up his freedom in the specific sense of his original nature to protect the freedom of his people in the political sense. The names of the Reach hold stories in their syllables. The land itself is older than the Nords who named it Skyrim. The Forge Master in the Bethalft ruins has no individual name. It is a type. The Forge Master is the Forge's master, which is a job title rather than an identity. The Dwemer did not, as far as surviving records indicate, name their automatons as individuals. They assigned them functions, and the functions became their definitions. The Forge Master has no interiority to name. It has purpose. It has a directive. It does not need anything else. This is the sharpest contrast available in Skyrim's boss roster. On one end, Paarthurnax, who carries ambition and cruelty in his name, and has spent thousands of years being something better than those words. On the other end, the Forge Master, which has no name and no interiority and no story except the one its function tells. It guards. It has always guarded. It will always guard, as long as it functions and there is something to guard. The most tragic of all the named bosses in Skyrim might be the simplest. Moroke means glorious. He was the greatest dragon priest. He had the greatest artifact. His name was accurate when it was given. And he ended up preserved in magical stasis for decades by the sacrifice of two people who had no choice in the matter, in the ruins of the city that was his world, waiting for someone to fight him for a staff he probably could not have kept, even if he won. Glorious. The word carries its own weight in the rubble of Labyrinthian. The words are the things. In Skyrim's deepest lore, in the cosmology that the Greybeards built their silence around, language is not a representation of reality. It is reality. Every dragon's name is a creation. Every Nord who shouts is reshaping the world. Every word carved into a word wall was a monument to the act of speaking truth into existence. And the bosses of Skyrim, the ones we have spent this night with, are all of them named for what they are. The truth of each one is in the syllables. Alduin destroys and devours and masters. Paarthurnax has ambition and cruelty. Miraak guides allegiance. Durnevir is cursed and never dying. Na Kreen wants vengeance. We heard their names long before we understood them. We fought them long before we knew what they were carrying. And now, on this quiet night, we know. The fire at the top of the throat of the world, the gray permanence of the soul cairn, the twin dragons beneath the ice, the frost giant king who rises when you return what was his. They are all still there. They will be there tomorrow night and the night after, and every night you need somewhere else to be. Rest easy, wherever in the world you are. The world of Skyrim will keep until you return. If you made it this far tonight, you are exactly the kind of listener this channel is made for. Subscribe if you have not. Leave a comment with where you are and what hour is outside your window. And if there is a specific piece of Skyrim's history, a specific dungeon or quest line or piece of lore that you want to spend a night with, say so. We will find it together. Until the next fire.